Welcome, I'm Austin.
I'm Jett.
This is Anime Vitality, and today we're going to be drinking some Superior Iron Goddess Oolong, and we're going to talk about Mushoku Tensei. So, just to start off, we're met with our main character, Rudius. It's like a 32-year-old otaku, horrible attitude, and things start off with an ambulance. Turns out he had saved two young kids from a horrible accident, and him sacrificing his own life for a kind act grants him a reincarnated form in an unfamiliar realm. But he maintains his kind of bad attitude ego. He's still a sentient 32-year-old in an infant's body, which I think is a pretty... it's an interesting way to promote some character growth.
Oh, yeah.
But he quickly becomes pretty proficient in magic. Not only in the fact that he can cast high-level magic on his own, but he does not need a tutor. He doesn't even need to do incantations eventually. And his mom finds out about this, super proud, because she's a caster as well, I believe, primarily a healer.
Back in her her adventuring days, yeah.
And she immediately is gung-ho about him getting a tutor, so his tutor, Roxy, a demon, meets him with kind of the same attitude. She's like, "Are you kidding me? This is who I'm tutoring? This is some bullshit."
Yeah, it was funny. She sees that he's... Because at the time, obviously he starts off as like an infant, a newborn, and it is really interesting because, like Austin said, he has his 30, whatever-year-old...
ego, I guess?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But he's going through, he's being reborn, and so he spends about the first 4 years. I think he's about 4 or so whenever he's like able to read. I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly.
And he has to learn the language.
Yeah, because it's a different language, and he picks it up pretty quickly. I'm sure him being a 30-year-old in mind probably helps.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they get this. They get Roxy, the magic tutor for him. She's in appearance pretty young herself. And
I think she ends up being like 50.
Yeah, she's like in her 40s, like 40, something like that. Yeah.
The particular race of demons she lives to be like 200.
Yep.
But eventually, they form a bond, and whenever he showcases an advanced spell casting capability, especially they call it silent spell casting. And I don't know, by the end of this episode, I'm just kind of wondering to myself, or at the end of the first episode rather, how much Rudy's going to grow. He's kind of they're very blatant in making him look and feel like a pervert.
Absolutely.
And that's a reoccurring
theme, yeah. But so what I like, so at the end of the first episode, really, he has his magic tutor, and it's pretty clear that he's a mage of some sort. But I really liked the atmosphere. I guess like you could say on his family's his new family's. I don't know,
dynamic
farm or ranch. Like they just like live like out in the open, outside of some village, and
in the sticks, I guess.
Yeah, in the sticks per Rudy.
Paul and Rudy.
Yeah, but I'm all for like the fantasy world kind of, green and mountains as far as the eye can see.
Forests.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as opposed to the mid city Japan. So I thought that was an aspect I liked of it. But episode 2 really kicks off. Immediately, we dive into the scumbag Rudius. He used to be in his previous life. He chose to stay at home and choke the chicken instead of, mourn what is presumably. I think it was his parents. Because if you,
they really didn't touch on it.
Yeah, they didn't touch on it too much. But this kind of, so whenever it's like panning in that funeral hall, I guess.
It shows a man and a woman.
Yeah, so it shows a man and a woman, and then a little bit later on, which whenever we get there, I'll speak on it. But I do believe it's his parents. Anyway, so the Earth MC, or Rudius, he's kicked out what I believe to be his younger siblings, and I say that because whenever I guess we can hear Rudius, his new parents making
They're not shy about
passionate love, you know. He says I'm hoping for younger sisters. I'm tired of brothers. And so that's what made me think that those were his brothers that kicked him out of his I'm assuming his deceased parents.
Yeah, because way later in the series do we even get to see what his parents were like, and it was very like touch and go, like more supportive than we would think, but I think it just goes to show how traumatic his bullying experience was.
Exactly, yeah, and like I said, like right after he gets kicked out is whenever he says he's tired of his younger brothers. But yeah, so back in the new reality, Rudius he's as perverted as ever. He continues his studies, learning of demons and.
It seems to be foreshadowing. He's learning about demons. He kind of wants to learn other languages.
Yeah. And so skip a year, tremendous development. He immediately talks about how more powerful he feels. His overall mana just feels more. He can use it more. He doesn't get nearly as tired as easy.
Yeah, because he would like pass out and.
Yeah, exactly. But he still has incredibly mediocre sword development. Yeah. So, but he learns of Renoa, a school for magicians.
And I think Roxy talks about it on like his 5th birthday. I wish we got more of that. I think that's what we can look forward to season 2 is Renoa and kind of what happens
Just
there.
learning more about it because it's really touch and go as well.
It feels like initially I was a little annoyed, but I think they did a good job of planting that seed and just kind of letting it grow throughout the course of the show because they really, I don't know, it really just felt like a seed planted. You were always kind of wondering. It ends up being a hook for the next arc, but yeah, at this point, Roxy leaves, so that was a pretty big moment for Rudius because he's been a recluse for so long.
She she gets to the point where she's like, there's just not much more I can teach you, you know, like you're super advanced and as your master, there's not much more I can show you.
Yeah. And there are several moments in the show where I get so excited about the possibility of like a battle mage because he's learning swordsmanship. His dad's a renowned swordsman. He has this natural aptitude for magic and he can cast immediately. So I think there's a lot of potential there that I'm looking forward to seeing. And they start to really dive into Rudy's bullied past, and they really expand on it a lot, and you could kind of start to feel for him. You can kind of understand where he's coming from as that kind of opens up, and
yeah, he's pretty traumatic, you know, bullying that had taken place on him. I'm assuming during his high school years.
Yeah. And so with all that in mind, it's really difficult for Rudy to leave his home. I think this is the first time he had to leave his home because Roxy wants to do, I guess, her final exam, and they have to go to an open space to do it.
And yeah, he was terrified because he had never left his home after a specific event occurred. He then would refuse to leave his home. It doesn't even really seem like he left his room in his home.
Yeah.
And he was just terrified to go outside. kind of kept having like some post-traumatic stress. He would like look out his window and just immediately feel discomforted in his original life. And so it's interesting how a little bit of those kind of carries over to him. Like he kind of hang with him still.
Yeah. The trauma really stuck. It really did.
But Roxy made him just get out, get out of the house, get out of the yard, and that was huge for him. Really left an impact on him.
And I think as they were leaving the house to go to this open field, and he thought all these people were staring at him, but they were actually greeting Roxy, and she really became a part of the community in the time that she spent there. And he was like, oh, these people aren't judging me. They like the fact that they got to meet and learn about Roxy. I think it's fine to interact with people.
And it touches a little bit on how, so obviously Roxy is a demon, and some of the demons look, human, but they just have certain colored hair or a few other characteristics that are different than that of a human would be. And Rudius even kind of spoke on, it must have been maybe hard for Roxy because she's so different. But in the 2 years that she was my teacher, she really has grown on the village folk, and I think that also kind of inspired him a little bit.
Most definitely. And this was kind of a sad moment, but whenever Roxy casts her spell, which summons, I think they call it like cumulonimbus or something.
Yes.
And it's that big storm, and the lightning strikes her horse, Carbaggio. I was pretty sad about that.
Yeah.
But
Rudius is family's horse, and then this bolt of lightning from the sky just comes and cooks the horse, and they're both kind of like freaking out about it. But
that's the nice thing. They really lean on healing magic.
Yeah.
It's really a saving grace. But Rudy, he effectively casts a spell, casts it stronger than Roxy.
I can't remember the level. Was it Saint? I can't remember what.
Yeah, she said he achieved Saint level water magic by 5. Which
by
is
5 years old.
Amazing.
And it's so cool because, we're like, he's 5, but he is just so grown up for a 5-year-old. And obviously none of his family obviously knows that he's kind of like has a sentient mid-30s-year-old mind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's walking around and he's 5 years old, and he just acts so adult. And they even talk about that. Like, his parents are like, wow, you're just, you're so grown up. You forget that he is so young.
You really do.
And so it kind of just adds to like, wow, he's this level. Not only can he do incantationless magic, but he a saint level at 5 years old. It's a really big deal. And so yeah.
Yeah. So Roxy takes her leave, leaves him with a wand. I guess that's tradition. Once you get to the point where your teacher cannot teach you anymore, they bestow you your first wand. And I think Rudy asks if he can marry her, and she's like, "You can, let's wait 10 years, and we'll talk again," which was kind of funny. And he's already starting to grow a little bit. I thought this was a good growth episode for Rudy. He kind of moved past his trauma a little bit. He's all about adventuring now. So all in all, a nice start.
Oh yeah. And so the first couple episodes only really take place in the house and around their village, property really mainly. But it's still just, I don't know. There's just so much to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's such an interesting, unique world.
It sounds like they're speaking French. Like whenever they speak like their language, it really sounds like a weird mixture of Japanese and French. That me and my limited linguistic knowledge, but that's kind of what I thought.
Right.
So kicking off into the next episode, Rudy has conquered his fear for leaving home, ready to take his first steps towards his own journey, his new life, and this becomes a running gag in the show that I think is really funny. But he acquires a holy relic from Roxy, which ends up being a pair of her panties
that he had stolen.
Yeah. And he keeps it in like a nice wooden box, and so some things don't change.
Yeah, and he like hides it under his. He like tucks it under somewhere. But yeah, and so
he takes, so his father kind of bestows upon him some wisdom of like, why do we do the things we do to train and become stronger, and it's to protect people who can't. And he takes this into full stride as he is going out and he sees 3 kids throwing dirt clods at this poor girl. We don't know it's a girl yet.
Yeah.
I knew it was a girl pretty quickly,
yeah,
but Rudy didn't.
That's what I was wanting to ask you. I was curious if you knew right away.
I picked up on it. I was like, this is gonna be really weird. But he ends up saving her from a group of bullies, and Paul even scolds Rudy because I guess one of the moms came up and she was like, your son, he bruised my son, and I can't believe you let him do this. And
this is also an important theme as well, because again, Rudy is 5 years old, and you know he sees Paul, his father, waiting on him on the doorstep. And he's like, maybe I can't. He says something to him, tries to greet him, but he sees that Paul is like not happy and was waiting outside for him, and that was strange. And so, you know, and Paul's like, why did this mom, like, what did you do today? Why did this mom come to me? You know, and before Rudy could even really explain himself, he just gets struck by Paul.
Oh yeah, because he was really like, you don't want to hear my side of the story. He was frustrated. He was like, you're my dad. You should have more faith in me.
Absolutely. He's like, I've worked really hard to be like a good son. And
and it eventually, like, the tables kind of turn. You can tell, I think in Rudy's past life, he was probably good at arguing.
Yes.
Because he really turns the table on Paul and makes Paul feel like an ass, which rightfully so. He should have maybe got his son's side of the story first.
Yeah.
And he eventually listens, and Paul's pretty mortified at the fact that he struck his son before he listened to him. Which was some development from Paul, I guess. He's kind of cocky.
Arrogant.
Definitely the most attractive male in the area because he gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that later.
Yeah.
But they move forward. Time moves on. There's a lot of time skipping in this anime, and
but I feel like they do make points of letting you know how much time has passed by and
they
how
do a good
old
job.
The characters are.
Which I don't want to be following around a 5-year-old for the whole time.
Exactly.
So I appreciate it at the same time. But he spends, I believe, 6 months working with Sylphie, training her. She even gets the hang of silent spell casting at the end of it.
Yeah.
I think she's the only one who even figures it out because Roxy couldn't. And
I'm not sure how much time has so about 6 months. I do remember them saying about 6 months had passed, and maybe I'm curious to see how proficient Sylphie can be in the silent spellcasting. They don't really talk about that too much ever again, other than like we see her do it once, kind of just barely.
Yeah, it's like she conjures a little water.
Exactly, but so it starts raining. They're playing. It starts raining.
Beginning of the end.
Yeah, they run home. Lilia, the maid, has drawn a bath for Rudy and friend, she says. And so they go up to Rudy's room. The bath is waiting. You can see the steam coming out of it. And so Rudy just strips down immediately, as you would do, I guess. Like,
and you can tell Sylphie's up.
Yeah, she's kind of weirded out, and of course, Rudy's like, "What's the problem?"
Yeah, you're gonna get sick. Come on.
Yeah, like you're gonna catch a cold. Like, come on. And he's like, "I'm already naked."
Yeah, what's there to hide?
Yeah, what's there to hide? We're both little boys. Like, what?
And that's when he found out they aren't both little boys,
Yeah,
and he kind of traumatizes Sylphie.
Yeah, he takes her shirt off. She's covering up, and she has her underwear on. She's in nothing but her underwear now,
and she cries, and it ends up being kind of a traumatic thing. Sylphie takes her bath, and then Paul and Rudy take theirs, and Paul, tables turn once again, and Paul gets to like, can you tell me what happened?
Yeah.
And
that was a nice moment for them.
It was.
I laughed though. So obviously, he tricks Sylphie. He's like, okay, well, if you don't want to take your underwear off, fine, whatever. I mean, then turns around and like,
then
yoink,
and then it's like shining. Like,
yeah, and it's funny because he's like, he believed her to be a boy, so and he's like, when I pulled her pants down, it wasn't the, I can't remember what he said.
It wasn't what he thought would be there.
It's not what I thought it would be there. And it's funny because he's just his verbiage he uses. He's like, I mean, I'm no, dark
expert
blade myself, but yeah. So it's just the verbiage he uses really funny. But yes, so that was a nice moment with him and Paul. Paul's talking to him.
No means no. Like, you should have known better. And he's like, you should really apologize. And his apology was pretty hilarious because he basically was like, I'm so sorry. I thought you were a boy this whole time, which kind of made it worse.
Yeah, he's like, your hair's short. I thought you were a boy this whole time.
Sylphie cries again, and Paul's like, maybe my son is an idiot. Which was wholesome, I guess. It was funny, and we get some breakthrough between the tension earlier.
Yeah, and you can tell that. So immediately after, you can really tell that. Paul and Rudy are sparring with swords, swordsmanship, how they do every day. And I guess Rudy's movements are a little more sloppy than usual. So he asks what's going on, and Rudy kind of tells him he's still a little bit sad about the Sylph situation. She's been kind of had a cold shoulder to him. But she comes over that day, and they have a nice moment where she forgives him, and it's kind of like, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Let's just start over, be normal, how we were. So, yeah, and it's the end of that. So then episode 4 really kicks off.
What an episode!
What an episode indeed. So it's happy, really happy at first. Zenith, the Rudy's mom, Paul's wife, find out they're pregnant again. They're happy. They didn't think that Zenith could get pregnant. I guess she maybe had some fertility issues after Rudy was born. So she's pregnant. They're so happy.
Then Lilia is like, I'm also pregnant.
Yeah, and so then it's like they're sitting down, and then Lily's like, I'm so sorry, I'm pregnant. And you just the look on everyone's faces, they're like...
They all knew who it was.
Yeah. And seeing this for the first time, I was like, no,
I know. Also, side note, something I really appreciate that they do with the intro is they work it into the show.
I love that.
I thought that was so cool.
I've never seen that before, I don't think. And I love it. It's like, I don't... Even with my favorite openings, it's just nice to...
It's unique. It's clever, too.
Yeah.
Because usually I just get into a rhythm of like, okay, I need to skip and I need to get more watched. Let's skip the intro, skip the outro. And they kind of incentivize you to not do that and appreciate it for what it is.
Yes, I really like that as well.
Go back to this very tense
moment. My goodness, yes. So, conversation ensues. It's winter, dead of winter, awful conditions. Obviously, like horse and carriage is the main means of travel, it seems like.
So they're trying to navigate the situation. Yeah, Paul's not a part of it.
Right, and Lily's like, I plan to help you, Zenith, with the birth. After that, I'll take my leave. And Zenith's kind of like, she's frustrated. I think she's holding her, like, burying her face in her hands the whole time. She's like, you will not survive if you do that. Like,
yeah, she's like talking through her teeth.
Exactly, like literally talking through her teeth. You will not survive if you do that. Rudy kind of senses this, and he's like, this was Paul's fault. He can't. I
heard him force himself.
Yeah, I heard him force himself on her, and so he says that. Paul tries to interject. Zenith
puts him in his place.
Yeah, puts him in his place, and essentially Rudy convinces everyone to kind of integrate
co-parent
situation essentially, and they end up having a really good attitude about it, and that's think we realize how difficult that would be. You know, like,
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine what she feels like, Zenith. So
I think it shows a lot for her and her, because she was showing quite a bit of compassion and concern for Lilia's situation. Like you're gonna be having a baby too, and like you won't survive in the winter.
Yeah. It's a month's travel to her hometown. So yeah. So essentially, Rudy convinces the co-parenting situation.
All because he knows Lilia knows he has his holy relic, and
she helped him out by not exposing that.
Yeah, so he's like, all right.
He feels like he owes her for that. Yeah,
which was kind of funny.
Yeah, again with that running gag. So yeah, Rudy ends up with 2 sisters. Time moves on. So this is I believe this is the first time Rudy brings up, I want to go to the magic school. He receives a letter from Roxy the first time since her departure, I believe. And she states, I'm tutoring again. It's the prince of, can't remember where. He's the 7th son.
Yeah, it's like the 7th prince of a kingdom. He's a little pervert too.
Just like Rudy. Not nearly as clever or as cunning as Rudy. I do hate that prince though. But yes, and she's like, I can't even imagine how advanced you are at this point. And Rudy kind of feels like, because he hasn't improved really. He hasn't really been doing. He's just been hanging out with Sylphie, and he's kind of content. And he speaks on, I'll just hang out here with Sylphie forever.
Yeah.
And so him receiving this letter from Roxy kind of jumpstarts his passion for magic again. And they're eating dinner, and he says, I want to go to magic school. Can we make that happen? However, I want to pay for Sylphie's tuition as well because I know her family can't afford it. Paul kind of shuts that down, like, no,
we're doing okay, but like not okay to send you both to school.
Like you would be one thing, both of you guys, we're not gonna be able to do that. So Rudy's rebuttal is, what if I get me a job as well paying as possible? I'll work hard and pay for Sylphie's tuition. So Paul is left to kind of chew on that. So they're training in the front yard as they do every day. This carriage pulls up.
And he loses it when he sees Ghislaine for the first time. I think he calls her a kitty titty. Yeah, so Ghislaine jumps out. Rudy's surprised to see that everybody knows her except for him. Obviously, she's an old friend. And out of nowhere, Paul kind of looks at Rudy and engages him in some pretty hardcore swordplay and knocks Rudy out. Yeah. It is the first time we see Rudy. I'm sure this is what got you the most excited. We see Rudy, sword in hand, also wield some magic. Yeah. Kind of doesn't really affect Paul. It's the equivalent of like during a sword match, you throw some dirt in the face of your opponent. And so Rudy gets knocked out, thrown in the back of the wagon, and that's kind of how that episode ends. And we get right back into it with Rudy reading the letter from his father, explaining the situation. He even says in the letter, I know if I presented this to you, you wouldn't have accepted anyways. So here we are. You're going to go be a tutor for a noblewoman in Roa, as well as the tutor for Ghislaine. And it's a 5-year commitment. So this is, of course, going to be another time skip for the most part. But no contact with family, no contact with Sylphie. No letters, nothing. Yeah. You got to learn how to be independent, which is kind of crazy when you think about doing this to a 5-year-old. I know it. Yeah, because you often forget he's 5 years old. They definitely don't treat him like it. He probably doesn't need to be treated like it anyways. But they probably feel like just because they know their son after living with him, they know how he is, and that they don't need to treat him like a 5-year-old. He's so mature for his age. For whatever reason. Yeah. Unbeknownst to them. So he meets I guess his employer, Philip Greyrat. Paul's cousin. Yeah. Of second cousin. It seems like they're not close. Yeah, which is important later. This becomes a weird thing. But in the letter, Paul actually lays out like, Ghislaine's mine, but you can hit on the girl you're tutoring.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah. That's fair game.
And I was like, are they family? I don't understand this dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're second cousins, which is still like, I don't know.
However you want to look at it.
Yeah, whatever.
Use your own discretion.
Yeah, tread lightly, I guess. But Rudius introduces himself to his student, Eris.
Who's actually, Rudius is 7 at this time.
I think he's 5 and she's 7.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And she's pissed that her tutor's younger.
Mm-hmm. Smaller, like he's a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, awful first impressions. I think she clobbers him almost immediately. Because Rudy does have a smart mouth. I'm not going to credit Eris that much for that. But to combat her attitude, he gets an idea and starts talking to Philip like, hey, let's create a scenario in which she's kidnapped and I save her because I know how to read, I know how to do math, and I know how to do math.
Which is what he wanted him to teach: arithmetic, language, and then magic. So, right, and so yeah, like you said, Rudy concocts this idea for a fake kidnapping. They're going to stage that kidnapping
right off the bat. Does not feel like a setup.
Right. So they immediately awaken in like these coffins type deals, into a place
like laughing over.
Yeah, and this is what I love. He's like, oh, this is perfect. Like, and he kind of mentions like, I told him to do someplace clean, but whatever. This adds to the overall aesthetic. Mm-hmm. He opens Eris's coffin box, whatever it is. She wakes up and he's like, if only you could do magic, you could burn out of these ropes, and which he immediately does. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, just help me get out of here. And
their captor hears the commotion.
The commotion, right? And this made me laugh. So he busts through the door. He's like, what's going on? Like, shut the hell up. And Eris, I don't know if we've spoken on how just
brash,
extremely brash princess. Who the heck do you think you are talking to me like this? Mm-hmm. However, she's outside of the mansion now, you know. The dude immediately walks up to her, massive dude, and just smacks her to the ground. And it's funny, so before this, Rudy's like winking. He keeps winking. Yeah. I noticed that, and I thought it was really funny. He's like, wink, wink, like...
Yeah, like you give it to her.
Yeah. And then he's stunned whenever the guy sends her flying.
She has blood out of her mouth, like teeth on the ground.
Yes, he's stomping on her. And Rudy's like shocked, and I was disappointed whenever the guy is done beating up on Eris. He turns around. Rudy just immediately turns his head like, I'm breaking. Hey, you just did that to that woman, but I'm breaking eye contact, and I don't want to get struck.
So yeah, this is quickly derailed.
Yeah.
Definitely not the scheme Rudy was thinking it was going to be. And their return back to Roa, definitely not a safe, guaranteed return. Mm-hmm. So, because Eris has caused so much despair for the people around her,
they finally
convince Rudy to like, we'll cut you in if you just let us sell her because we hate this.
We hate her. Like, we'll cut you in if you just let us go on with this.
And.
So
he does think about it because he was like,
how much is that? Can this pay for 2 enrollments into the Magic University?
I think they say it could pay for 10.
Yeah,
for
and
2
has
people.
To have some left over.
Yeah.
And but this is a really cool moment because it's the first time we get to see Rudy in action versus like not training. This is a real life scenario. We get to see him in his magical prowess, and I really like how he uses what would you call it, like a lot of the elements, like he.
Yeah, it's not just water.
Mm-hmm. Like he's stone and earth. He's kind of sitting flying at him.
He seems to really like this move where he puts his hand on the ground and it kind of like makes the ground like liquid, and then it hardens around them.
And they're like sink into the ground. And I like that move. Cool. He does do that a lot.
And then he sends up like a signal flare, thankfully, because
Ghislaine was.
They do like a sword throw.
Yeah.
And that would have been their demise. But Ghislaine comes in, and I think she's like like a
Sword King?
Sword King.
Mm-hmm.
And she just demolishes them. And even though, they make it back, not with the intended dynamics of the kidnapping, but
it had enough of an effect.
Yeah, it worked. And I don't know. At first, I didn't know how I would feel about Eris and Rudy's dynamic with each other, and
she's
just her as a character.
She was very insufferable at first.
Quickly, I think she showed the most development, just because she really cuts that attitude out towards the end of the show, and becomes more level-headed and more willing to experience and learn. And although this doesn't happen nearly as early on in the show as I speak of it, but
so it's like the next day after the kidnapping ruse, political nuance kind of starts off. There's confusion over the physical need of a gray rat. So,
because he talks about how it's an issue.
They don't.
That he's there.
Yeah,
especially physically, and I was like, "What does that mean?"
Don't make too much noise. And we learned a little bit more about that later on. So Hilda, Eris's mother, she's introduced to Rudy.
Cold shoulder.
A very cold shoulder. It's apparent where Eris gets some of her attitude from.
Saros, I think it's Philip's father. So I guess Eris's grandpa, his great uncle.
Saros. So that's Saros, I believe is how you say it. Extremely. He looks just massive, but he's an intimidating, demanding man. He enters, and he immediately begins a conversation. Hey, like, teach Eris magic, in which Rudy kind of says, "I think she should come ask me that herself," and that was a funny moment where Eris does her whole complete in classic anime fashion. She does her best beast person imitation.
Yeah, they're obsessed with them.
The gray rats they have an
affinity for them.
They definitely have an affinity for the beast people. Every single maid there is a beast person, it seems like. Right.
And he even clocks Philip for not giving Rudius the credit for, because he wants it to be kind of on the down low, like Elaine's the one who saved them for the political error of everything, and Saros is like, no, he deserves.
Give him the credit. At least give him the credit where it's due. So they've been trading for about a month. Eris's bad attitude persists. Rudy's perverted tendencies persist.
Yeah.
However, nonetheless, their studies and training continue.
And Eris and Rudius's relationship, it seems to get better.
Slowly, very slowly but surely. She's she at least respects him enough at this point. Like, she's not. When they first met, there was no respect. Now I'm at least gonna let this guy teach me some things. That's kind of where we're at right now. But it was really cool. An outing to the city ensues, and it's cool. The first time we get to see, we're getting to see
an actual depth into the world.
Exactly, some depth into the world. So I liked that.
And they talk about what was it?
So they had kind of looked around shop some. They're leaving. It's like sunset at this point, and they look into the sky and see that floating.
Like fortress.
Yeah, look fortress. If those who have seen Sword Art Online, it's literally that same. Looks like the same thing. The 100th floor. It's the floating fortress in the sky, and they kind of start talking about it. And so this is cool. It's some lore into the world, and so
I think it's Perugius's domain, and they talk about him slaying Lapis, and
this is about 400 years ago. So he slays lapless, and he's the hero of what would like a hero of legend. He's very much cemented into greatest hero of all time. And so at this point, it's cool. Eris buys Rudy an aphrodisiac that he was eyeing
unknowingly.
Yeah, unknowingly to her, that he was eyeing at the market. And I love this. It ends the episode in a funny way where they're trying to get the information out of him of what it was.
What's an aphrodisiac? Huh?
Yeah, and so Ghislaine has him full Nelson, and she's tickling him, trying to get the information out of him. So nice moment.
Yeah.
For them.
Another time skip. We're on to winter. Hilda, continues the cold shoulder, and at this point, Eris is turning 10, so it's a big event. I think they mentioned it earlier, but they only really celebrate 5, 10, 15 for your birthdays, because those are just big moments for life. And
at 15, you become
a man, a woman, an adult.
Right.
So being a noble, they put on this production. Eris has to do a dance, and in typical Eris mentality, does not want to learn.
Right.
So
she's very much, I don't need to dance. I'm not going to be a dancer when I'm an adult. So why do I need to do this?
Waste of time.
Even though it's like a customary thing in their culture.
And at this point, Rudius is starting to feel some burnout. I don't think he's ever worked. So I don't think he realized how much time it takes.
Yeah.
And,
he's working at the very least 7 days a week. Is he?
Yeah, full time.
Yeah.
So he decides to spend his free time learning beast language, and I believe the demon language, and
which he gets this unexpected free time because Eris needs to take a little bit of time out of her day to practice for her dance, right?
Yeah, there's a maid that comes by, and she's like, do you mind if we dip into some of your time? And Rudy's like, yeah.
Not at all.
Go ahead.
So cool moment, kind of, well, not about cool, but interesting moment. That's, as you were saying, he goes and talks to Philip and is very interested in these, just learning a new language. What three are there? There's
the beast god language, there's the demon god language, and then...
Battle god?
Something like that. But... they have a moment of their love for beast people.
And that's funny.
Runs in the family, I guess.
Yeah. One a gray rat, once a gray rat. Yeah.
So, cut back to Eris. Her dance lessons definitely don't go well. And Rudius, being the only one who's broken through to her, gets roped back in. And... there's kind of a nice introspective moment discussing the need to push yourself to do things you aren't good at rather than give up altogether. Eris gets frustrated about this several times throughout the series that, Rudy, you pick up on these things so naturally. And he's like, well, no, not actually.
Yeah, not everything.
I'm trying to learn this language and it's near impossible, but that's what makes it so rewarding is once I figure it out. And so I think that clicks with her, and Rudy gets punched to the head. Pervert. And another breakthrough is made, and this is an interesting little subplot moment, but Rudius makes this very intricate, almost like the anime figurines you'd see out of stone of Roxy, and he ends up selling it to make some extra money, and he kind of keeps this going on. He makes these figurines.
Kind of just does it in his free time to... He's practicing, his magic and the
earth
focusing, and just being able to get intricate details. And it's just a way for him to practice, but also he does make these stone figurines, and he sells, like Austin said, he sells up for some money, and it's funny. It finds its way back to Roxy,
which is so enough. Funny.
Yeah, she said it even has moles in all the right places. Yeah,
yeah. She said it was. She said something like, "I hope this doesn't mean I'm cursed."
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
But it's an wholesome exchange, and he had mentioned in a previous letter that he's struggling learning the demon language, and she goes through the effort of making him a textbook, which was really nice. And yeah, that the perverted prince ends up with the figurine, and it was just a funny moment.
Yeah.
Very wholesome. This anime has a lot of them. For an isekai, like, such a spectrum of emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we get to Eris's dance. Doesn't go well. The dance partner is not able to keep up with her. I think Eris is nervous and going a little too fast. So Rudy steps in to save the day, and he makes it click to her by telling her to close her eyes and think of it like sword training.
Mm-hmm.
And they get through the dance, have a great time.
They do exceptionally well, and they have a great time themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the first. So this is where their relationship truly blossoms. I would say, like, Eris was so happy, like she was all smiles, and so this is probably, I would say, what really shaped something for them, right?
Sure,
like,
it was a defining anchoring moment in
like
their relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And which we see this because after the dance, 3 girls about Rudy's age kind of come up to him, and are like, "Hey, like, we've never seen you. Where are you from?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, and ask him all these questions, and Eris immediately gets jealous and just yanks him away. So you can tell she's starting to feel some type of way. It seems like.
Sure, and we conclude this section of the anime with Rudy doing the obligatory wand. I think you've learned everything I can teach you, so here's your wand.
Which is a cool moment. We saw him, Roxy do that to him, and now he's doing it to Ghislaine and Eris.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a strange...
I don't know what you'd call it, like an orb?
Yeah, an orb. Saturn rings on it. It hangs in the sky. Eris keeps progressing sword god style. She's doing very well. You can tell she's just improving all the time. And Ghislaine speaks on it, saying she'll probably be at advanced rank pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of time passes. Rudy's just kind of walking around, and he sees Eris trying to
sneak some stuff.
Sneak some stuff in, and turns out it's about to be his 10th birthday, and they're trying to throw a surprise party for him. And so, Paul's family. What is
the Grey Rat family?
So they're the Boreas, and then I think Paul stems from the
Tosei or
something like that.
But essentially, I believe it was that Paul was supposed to be head of the Boreas house. He left to go do his own thing, and so Philip became the head of the Boreas family, and this creates some animosity.
Yeah.
So it now makes sense as to why there's kind of an animosity between him and Hilda, because
her children were taken at birth, as is customary,
to the Grey Rats.
Right.
And maybe that was why Paul was like, well, I don't, this isn't worth it.
Right.
Very wholesome birthday party. They bestow upon him a very nice staff. No telling what they spent.
They said it was they had taken the most expensive materials from all over. They had taken it to one of the most renowned craftsmen in the town, and just got this extremely elegant, beautiful, powerful staff made for Rudy. And it was pretty sweet. It was cool. It was a cool moment.
He definitely leans into magic more when he gets this, and I'm still hoping to see a hybrid magic swordplay situation, but kind of to go back into the whole family dynamic. Philip offers Eris as his wife to create a coup in the family.
So I guess Philip really does like Rudy.
Mm-hmm. Or he was drunk. Rudy's like, I'm gonna pretend you told me.
Yeah, like this drunk. Is yeah. But I don't know. He's definitely up to something. He talks about a coup. He says, "I'll even leave Eris tied up in your bedroom tonight," which is crazy. That's his daughter, and she's like, what, 12 or yeah. And so, yeah. So Rudy kind of ignores it.
He excuses himself from the situation.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Eris is in his room.
Anyways, yeah, in her nightgown, and she's like, "It's your birthday. I thought you'd be lonely. I think I'll sleep here tonight." And oh man,
it's kind of weird.
I was so disappointed in Rudy.
He lost control.
Yeah, he lost control.
Made it uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. He tries to make an advance on Eris, makes her feel uncomfortable. She slugs him, and he instantly regrets it. And so I'm like, okay, he'll learn from this, right?
No.
Yeah, so
he's not too quick to learn when it comes to overcoming his perversions.
But Eris forgives him, and she makes a statement. What did she say? 10? Did she say 5 years?
When Rudy's an adult, they can revisit the idea.
They'll revisit in 5 years. And so I thought that was interesting because the fact that she even said that to him. Mm-hmm. Obviously she feels something towards him.
Yeah.
She's growing close to him, and I mean she's. It seems like she wants to have something with him once they become adults.
Older,
yeah. So that's interesting. Just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
For sure.
Because there's Sylph. There's Sylphie. There's Roxy.
I know he's a little player.
But I am interested in the relationship of him and these people. So I think it's gonna be interesting to who does he choose, if anybody, like that. I don't know. It's just things to think about and kind of keep in the back of your mind.
For sure. And we get a look back into how things are going at home. His family are preparing to send him gifts for his 10th birthday, and it's delayed. There are monster attacks.
They actually wanted to go.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to because, for whatever reason, there's a high number of monsters in the area, which is unusual for that area. So.
And a storm's brewing.
So
something's about to happen.
Right. Rudy, Ghislaine, and Eris take off. Rudy's going to show them his most powerful spell. Right, so they got to go into the country where no harm can be done to anything. And just before Rudy starts, they're suddenly attacked. And Ghislaine immediately jumps into action. Love seeing her in combat mode.
So cool.
And so this is an interesting character, and I think the mask he was wearing, I don't really know.
Looks like a fox mask.
Yeah, what's it?
Kitsune mask.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. And he says, if I kill the boy, this strange event may stop. Mm-hmm. And Glenn's like, we have nothing to do with this. He ends up leaving, and then you just see this massive flash of blue light. And it's at this point for the first time we see the man god.
Interesting character. How he moves, it feels like CGI.
I hate it.
It feels very strange and uncanny.
It's like he's exactly.
And immediately Rudius feels like he regresses. He's cranky. He's acting like he did in the beginning.
But this is the first time he's back in. He sees himself back in his old body, and he's kind of shocked.
Astral form.
Yeah, he's like, why am I? He's like, was this just a dream? Was I not really reincarnated and living this new life? I'm back in this body that I hate. I never wanted to see it again. I never thought I'd be here again. So I can kind of understand his little bit of animosity that's coming from him. Mm-hmm. So he's talking about this apparition who ends up being the man god, like you said.
And he touches on an interesting philosophy that I feel like is very prevalent now is if you have a lack of optimism, you can keep yourself from being let down. And that's definitely how he approached his life prior to being reincarnated. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a an interesting little takeaway from, I guess, the person he was.
Right.
But the man god gives him some insight.
He's like, when you wake up, you're gonna see a man help this man.
Yeah, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Let him help you, you help him. So, conveniently enough, Rudius has been learning the demon god language, and they're in the demon continent.
Right.
So,
desert-like, dry, barren land.
yeah, kind of like I think like the Grand Canyon landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Rudius is immediately met by a superb, honestly, maybe one of my favorite characters up to this point. I really like, or at least as a part of the trio, he's a great compliment to Eris and
he's
Rudius.
He's a cool character. I really like him as well.
And up to this point, there have been several moments where they were like, if you see a green-haired demon with a jewel in their forehead, run.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they're the most dastardly, dangerous being. They eat children.
Yeah. And they introduce each other. The superb, his name is Ruijerd, and he's kind of surprised that Rudius was so calm to speak with him. And when Eris wakes, she's panicking and like crying, and this is the first time you've seen anything like her, and Ruijerd's like, that's what I expected out of you.
Exactly. Like you're strange for not acting that way, but strange in a good way.
Yeah. And at this point, you're kind of wondering, like, why is he so interested in helping? Even though he does seem very wholesome, like, what is there for you to help these random kids out? And we start to finally get a taste as to why the Superbs have this bad reputation, and I guess his whole dynamic in that. But adventuring continues. We learn the purpose of those gems in their foreheads, and it's essentially like their third eye, and it lets them hunt
and track
whatever their target may be. Really cool. They arrive to a village met with a large amount of suspicion, and after some back and forth, they get to meet the elder. And by an interesting turn of events, it's actually Roxy's village.
Yeah, where she's from.
And
he meets her father.
Yeah, and they speak telepathically, so not really too keen on outsiders. And as more dialogue ensues with the leader of this village, we kind of get a deeper look into Ruijerd's sincere nature. He has a deep desire to change the reputation of the Superbs, and his people were actually the ones who were betrayed. And it's kind of the classic, winners are the ones who write history kind of thing.
Which is, I don't know, I appreciate that because it's true. That's a very true statement. Like you never really have the full story usually. Like you kind of forget there's two sides to every story kind of thing.
And so Lovelace, who was touched on earlier, bestowed the Superbs these spears that eventually made them berserk. Like, didn't care who was in their path. It didn't matter if it was their family, if it was children. They killed whoever they crossed, and not their fault. It was just a byproduct of a curse. And due to this, Ruijerd lost his son, and this creates a strange ethos with Ruijerd and children, and it creates a lot of conflicts because he's like, children can do no wrong. Like, I have to protect them at all costs.
Yeah.
And so Ruijerd's very hell-bent on clearing his name and the name of his people. And so Rudy gives him his word, I'm going to help you do that, which is nice because Ruijerd's committed to getting them home, so fair trade. and Eris has completely changed demeanors in the demon continent from being a brat, cooped up in a castle. She's lighthearted, excited to adventure, ready to get out there and experience life, and so
her and Rudy are. I mean, they grow closer every day.
Absolutely.
At this point, yeah. They're like sleeping together, like so their relationship definitely continues to grow there.
Absolutely. And she really takes to this lifestyle, like
yeah, and she's always wanted to be an adventurer, though, you can tell. Just so she's all for it. Eating whatever they kill and cooking that day,
She trains a lot with Ruijerd as well, which I think really helps her progress. And it makes me wonder, maybe the noble life wasn't for her, because she's really acclimating well, and her character's more tolerable.
Yeah, at this point, I really enjoy her.
Yeah, it's not a pain to have her around.
And I would say this is like the meat and potatoes. Like we really start getting into just kind of like, I guess, what this anime is all about, maybe. Adventure and I'm all for it. Like I definitely was. I was ready to dive right in. At this point in the anime.
Absolutely. So now we get kind of a feel of the diversity of the demon people, because there's like animal humanoid looking people.
Yeah, there's all kinds.
Which is very interesting, and we learn about what Dead End or Ruijerd's reputation is with the other demons, and that if you cross paths with him, it's a dead end. You're not going to make it out. So they, at this point, dye his hair blue, and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's not a superb."
He's imitating one of the from Roxy's village. I can't. It starts with the M. I can't remember what their tribe is called, but
yeah. And the architecture is really interesting in these demon villages, from like the turtle huts to like these Aztec looking, like very interesting cities. But their objective now is, okay, we got to grind it out, make some money. And to do that, they enlist in the Adventurers Guild, and in efforts to clear Ruijerd's name, their party is called Dead End.
This is cool seeing Rudy kind of strategize this.
Yeah, you can see he's coming from, I guess, a long time MMO or maybe RPG playing perspective. He gets really into this portion of it.
Oh yeah.
And they kind of have to grind out the grunt work. They start at the bottom at F rank, and so another demon kind of gives them insight on their situation and encourages them to accept, another dream. So he meets with the man god, and there's encouragement for taking this job to find a kitten, and just trust me. So this lost kitten job ends up to pan out to an interesting situation. The kitten's like a panther; it's huge.
Yeah.
And they showcase teamwork really well as they start to work together. And Ruijerd's desire to protect kids leads to a death. It was pretty traumatic for Rudy in particular. Eris kind of brushed it off.
Yeah, like whatever.
And so this is kind of the first headbutting of a couple that we get between Rudy and Ruijerd. But Rudy's real ethic is, killing isn't okay. And Eris even gets into the argument.
Yeah, and this is another, she said, she's, for the first time we see her saying, like, Rudy's amazing. He's doing this for us. He's working hard for us. And she's really defending him. And so that was just very interesting to see.
Yeah, Ruijerd's philosophy needs a little more flexibility. So essentially, Rudy gets the idea to team up with these thugs and job swap, so they can kind of get jobs that they can't normally accept to make more money. And at this point, Rudy really grows into the leadership role of the leader of his party, and I think he does a great job in progressing and growing from this experience. And all in all, interesting episode. I think this really plays into the dynamic the Dead End group has.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it was really cool seeing them explore the demon continent, and just be introduced to it, and kind of all that entails introducing us to the Adventurers Guild, and that's, those are kind of everywhere, which we'll learn later on. And so we also see Roxy again. Long time no see. She returns to Roa, witnessing the damage from the monostorm, and so this is the first time we're also seeing that this has affected other people.
It's leveled the place.
Yeah, just like there's no Roa to even return to. And so the family's been separated altogether, which I was freaking out. I was like, oh no. And so we learned that Zenith was separated. Lilia and Aisha were separated, and then Paul and Norn are together. And Paul leaves a note posted, and he kind of explains, like, we're all separated. Like, Rudy, I believe in your abilities. Don't worry about me. Yeah. He's like, don't worry about me. I believe in your abilities that you'll make it back here. So please, once you see this, search for everyone else.
And he creates like this whole search and rescue team, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that. So it was, oh man, I was just disheartened to hear that they'd all been separated, and really add some suspense to the story now.
Oh yeah.
So cuts back to Rudy and the party. Monster hunt. They run into this ragtag newbie group, not too different from themselves. And there's another group, and they're arguing over who's going to get this bounty.
Yeah, like the guild triple booked us.
Yeah, blasted guild. And so they're arguing. Both groups move on. Obviously, one group in particular is younger and kids, and Ruijerd is like, let's go help them. And Rudy's like, well, we'll stay behind and we'll jump out and save them. Should things get super desperate, if they get hurt, at least a little bit, I'll be able to heal them. No harm done. So finally, they're following these guys for a little bit, and just these creatures pop up out of nowhere. And Rudy's like, not yet. We're gonna wait for things to really get dangerous. But of course,
I think this is when the Cobra thing appears.
Yeah, and just all you see is the torso of one of those members soar through the air,
cleaved. Yeah,
and then immediately Eris and Ruijerd take off. They kind of deal with the situation, and this is a pretty big moment. Another big moment. It seems like in a short amount of time between Rudy and Ruijerd. And he's like, why didn't you let me help him? I could have saved the day. And I think we really see it kind of affects Rudy. He's like, maybe I need to calculate some things better on my end.
Yeah, because his whole idea for waiting is we're going to let them get stressed so we can really seem like heroes. And they should have just jumped in.
Yeah. But also, Ruijerd is kind of like, he kind of realizes they are young kids, younger, but at the same time,
they're adventurous.
And they chose to do this, and they knew the dangers, and so he kind of steps back a little bit as well. So
sick combat scene.
Oh yeah, they stumble upon this. What did they call it? This giant red cobra, and it's just massive. And Rudy's like, he asked Ruijerd, "Can we do this?" And he's like, "We can defeat it." So they jump into action, and it's really cool seeing them work well as a team. Just seeing their teamwork is fun and awesome, and
then a big final hit with the magic.
Exactly, Eris, damages it, which leaves an opening. Ruijerd kind of commands Rudy to blast it, and he does, and then they defeat it. Super cool scene, and kind of I kind of like that he's only a magic user. I think at this point,
I do too. I think it would be a little ridiculous, and I think it adds some vulnerability. Like protect the mage. Warriors come in to make the opening.
He's like a role player in it, and that's he's not just in classic isekai fashion, this ungodly powerful being that cannot be beaten. And so I kind of dig that aspect of it.
Absolutely.
And so let's see. At this point, they have the teeth, the fangs of the cobra, headed back to the village to turn it in. I guess meet the other group they had an agreement with to swap and get their payment when they run into this.
Oh, he's like a horseman. I don't know if we ever got his name. I don't care to even learn it. I hated him so much.
I hated the guy. I hated him. I hated his horse face.
Yeah.
I hated him, man. And he essentially threatens. He's like, I heard what's going on. And he's threatening to turn them in, and if he doesn't get half of the bounty every month. And so, really cool moment, because Rudy is desperate, and his whole time he doesn't like killing. He's never been about killing.
He starts considering it.
Yeah, he you see, so he and Rudy has a spear. He's covered it up. Rudy's covered up his staff. But you can just see the light emulating kind of through it, and the sky kind of. And I don't know if that was Rudy's doing or not.
He's starting. It seems like he was about to start that cumulative.
And he's like,
spell. Yeah.
But he says to himself, "I'm getting Eris home, even if that means I have to kill this guy right here." And that was a huge moment for him, and really speaks on how his resolve to return Eris home. He wants to do that.
Strong in his
his will. And so, however, Ruijerd, before anything happens, before we see Rudy do anything, Ruijerd takes this water, dumps it on himself, to reveal his true green hair, and immediately the horseman is just stunned and shocked, and he's trembling in fear.
Like he's seen a ghost. He's like.
Yeah, and he says dead end, and he points at him. The whole village is in a panic. They take off. Ruijerd grabs the horseman by the throat and is like, "If we get to the next village and find our license revoked, I'll find you." He's strangling him at the time, and
he like carves a line in his
with the spear. Yeah. And so Ruijerd has to leave the village as the authorities are coming.
Yeah, he like. It was pretty sweet. He like bounds over. He like jumps out of the village basically.
And then so they leave the village, and it's nighttime, and they're calling his name and looking for him. He shows himself to be hidden behind these rocks. And another cool moment, another heartwarming moment. They've had some disagreements. They did some things well as a team. However, they had some huge miscalculations. That resulted in people losing their lives, and so they kind of had a come together moment. They apologized to each other, and they promised to do better moving forward.
Yeah, Ruijerd's going to allow Rudy to be the leader, and Rudy is going to communicate.
He was shouldering everything on his own, and when he didn't have to do that.
Right.
And so.
Good moment, really. And I'm glad Rudy and Ruijerd are kind of figuring each other out now.
Ruijerd, we see him shave his head.
Yeah.
To hide his green hair. He realized that was a huge component in immediate chaos whenever people see that and they know who he is. And then he bandana around his third eye.
And Ruijerd, in this moment, which was kind of nice, he even reiterates the whole warrior's purpose is to protect the weak, which was another nice.
He said you're a true warrior. Once I felt your resolve and you were willing to kill him to protect Eris. Like that resonated with me, and that's what warriors do, they protect. And so they really kind of spoke to each other, their actions right then and there. And then so it's kind of the ending of that episode, and I really liked this ending montage, if you will, kind of showing them traveling, the harsh, desolate lands, but also having fun with each other as they go. Really cool scene. Even though it's only like a credit sequence, it's really cool to see. And
more incentive to not skip the
exactly.
intro, outro.
Yeah. And so that was really the end of that. But yeah, I really like that cool ending sequence.
And at this point, the gang dead end. They make it to the ocean and a new town, exploring what it has to offer. And it turns out Roxy and her gang of adventurers, I believe they were party members of Zenith and Paul's original group.
Yes, and so to go back, there was a moment whenever Rudy was teaching, I believe it was math at the time, or it was either math or reading and writing, and Rudy kind of winks at Ghislaine to tell Eris a story in order to encourage her to keep on, and so Ghislaine tells the story, and she was describing the people in the group, in Paul and Zenith's old adventure group, which Ghislaine was a part of as well, and it showed the black silhouette of the group, and I'm sure you noticed like the real heavy bearded dwarf guy, I guess, as well as the blonde elf lady. Yeah, is that literally you could like, I finally noticed that was them, and so I don't know, I thought it was cool, like we get to see
good foreshadowing.
Yeah, good foreshadowing. And so that really only leaves the last like two members, because it was a party of 6, I want to say. So Paul, Zenith, those two that we learned about. So there's like 2 that we don't know. We don't know who they are. Yeah. And so I'm curious as to if we
get some insight onto that.
Yeah, can you see that and who that is? Just a cool point I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. And at this point, the group is gaining notoriety, and they even have nicknames like Ruijerd is the guard dog, and Eris is the mad dog, and
Rudis is kennel master.
He's the kennel master, yeah.
Which he was pissed about.
He was not happy. I guess he was like, well, I guess it's not the lamest nickname.
Yeah.
But I know he was definitely hoping for something else. And so they learned 200 coins is the price to cross the ocean, and money being a persistent issue with that end, they decide to hold a meeting. So Rudy's like, am I gonna? He looks at his staff. So several times he considers
some foreshadowing again there. Right.
And
this is cool though. It's the first moment they really sit down with one another, and
Rudy commits to the communicating.
And they kind of talk about what's the best way to navigate this. We might have to stay here for several weeks, months, whatever it takes, in order for us to earn enough money to board the ship.
Absolutely. And we get another dream sequence with the man god, and he recommends getting some food from a vendor and taking a stroll through.
In which this is the first time. Do we even know Rudy's original name?
I don't think so.
I don't think we do. But it's the first time that our otaku friend he's willing to be not so rash whenever he sees the man god.
He kind of acknowledges the fact that he regresses whenever he sees him.
Yeah.
So we wake up, Eris and Ruijerd sparring as they typically do, and Rudy decides to pay heed to the prophecy.
We see a little bit of Roxy here as well.
They just keep narrowly missing each other.
And she's spying on them, on them sparring with each other.
Because she's even heard talks of dead end, and at this point, Rudy gets his food, and he meets Kishirika, I believe, and she's a demon king.
Who I guess
queen,
has been
whatever, like a 400-year-old.
Yeah, she's been reborn, I guess. Yeah, and she's a really cool character. So this is the second time we even see her. The first time they just maybe show her in an outro, just before the credits scene, and we don't know who she is, but she introduces herself Rudy has his food. Obviously, he's walking, and he's like, okay, this
is who I give my food to.
Yeah, so he gives it to her. She just devours it, and offers to reward him. He's like, okay, money. She doesn't have any money on her. She's like, no.
Half the world.
Yeah, he's like, half the world. She's like, can't do that. He's like, what can you do? And she's like, what I can do is give you a demon eye, in which she proceeds to do. And I thought that was really cool.
So cool.
Super dig the demon eye.
Yeah, he gets the power of foresight.
Yeah, and it's only like 2 to 3 seconds maybe.
If he really focuses, he gets 2 extra seconds, which can be pretty huge, but I think is a relatively... It's not overpowered.
It's just quick enough to dodge a fatal blow, or it's just quick enough to...
If you're responsive.
If you can respond to get the upper hand. So it's not too OP, but it's still sweet, and I dig it.
Very cool. Yeah, and Rudy, at this point, immediately beats Eris in a duel. Pisses her off, of course. And he receives praise from Ruijerd. And so he gets cocky.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to fight you.
Maybe I could even beat you now. And then cut to the next scene. His face is just...
it's swollen. He's obliterated.
Everywhere.
And Eris again opens up about her frustrations with Rudy's natural affinity for seemingly everything. And after some reflection, Rudy, he's like, okay, I need to make a sacrifice for these people. So
everyone's asleep, and I believe it's at this point, right? He's like, I'm going to sneak out and sell my stuff.
And Ruijerd waiting for him. Also upset because, hey, we just talked about relying on each other. Like, why do you feel like you should do this?
And he's kind of like, what kind of man would I be if I let you, a child, do this? And he's also like, how do you think Eris would feel as well?
Yeah, and he said, as a sword is with a warrior, a maid should never sell their staff. You should never be without your weapon. And after finally communicating, they come to the conclusion that stowing away is their best option, which Rudy immediately kind of nixed as an option, because Ruijerd, if you look at like your classic affinity, he's like lawful good. Like, I'm not breaking laws. I'm helping whoever I see. So he knew this would be a problem. So there's been some flexibility. Ruijerd will stow away. And earlier on, when Rudy was kind of getting used to his eye of foresight, he ends up saving a guy from getting hit in the head with a pot. And lo and behold, while they're outside talking, this gentleman gives them the opportunity to stow away on his ship. So that worked out. So at this point, there's the OVA. So not necessary. I appreciated watching it. So this is kind of Eris's solo exploration.
I feel like we do learn. It's not really necessary, but we also see some things we didn't like. There's some kind of new information. We see a new character, and that this new character is related to something that we may learn about later on. But it is nice to just see more of Eris and her.
Yeah, just more development with her, just fleshing her character out more. So she accepts a goblin slaying quest and crosses paths with... I thought Eris was an insufferable brat, but this kid really takes it to another level.
Absolutely.
His name's Cliff, and I hated him. But he immediately gets clocked by Eris. He's intrigued by her strength, wants to follow her around.
Show out for her a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. And so annoyedly enough, she decides, okay, Cliff, you come on. And he has this pompous attitude, and Cliff keeps egging her on and convincing her to go to a dangerous part of the forest to display his magical prowess. Because he did a spell. Eris wasn't impressed. She's like, oh, Rudy can cast that in his sleep.
You can't do it. You're not doing anything that he can't do.
Yeah. So, at this point, I guess she feeds into it, and they go into a forest, quickly realizing they are lost.
Mm-hmm.
So their only shot is, unfortunately, following the sound of combat, which ended up being a pretty interesting scene of a temple knight dealing with some assassins.
Mm-hmm.
And so Eris immediately jumps into the aid of the temple knights because she's protecting a girl, and definitely improved in her swordsmanship, makes quick work of all of them, and for payment in saving them, the knight decides to escort them out of the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And Cliff is pretty obviously interested in Eris, and it seems like he's affiliated with those assassins.
Because one of them before, I guess, one was taking his dying breath and called Cliff by name.
Mm-hmm. Master Cliff.
Yeah, so obviously there's something going on there, which they don't really speak on it again, but possible foreshadowing.
And the whole time, Ruijerd was actually watching over Eris, which I think just plays into him. But as soon as they arrive back in the city, Cliff proposes actually to Eris and immediately gets shot down. His ego's crushed, particularly whenever he sees how Eris talks about Rudy.
I loved that.
It was so sweet.
I love that so much because Eris is like a completely different person now. Unrecognizable from who she was in her palace living days, and about a year or maybe a little bit over has passed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been about at least a year, and obviously her and Rudy spend a lot of time together. They sleep together every night, and it's kind of like they're almost in an unspoken relationship, I guess. And I don't know. I'm all for it. I'm a huge romance fan,
Me too. Yeah.
And so I'm glad. I was really happy when she just lit up, and you could see how animated she was when talking about Rudy.
Absolutely.
And all that he can do, and boasting for him, really. So that was just, I really enjoyed that.
And at this point, I can only help but wonder if Cliff's going to be an enemy along maybe next season, because he is not happy about how the dynamic is. And Eris, we find out, slayed his tutors, so Cliff is associated with the Pope, and she returns to an injured Rudius, and we'll get more into that on this episode we're about to talk about, because I feel like the order in which I watched it, I feel like it would have been better to watch the OVA after episode 13.
Yeah.
But it was still interesting.
Yeah. So OVA is super interesting. Just nice to see Eris kind of get her own time a little bit. So cut back to we're seeing Roxy again. And she's now formed a party with these people from Paul and Zenith's
Glory days.
It's pretty much glory days, adventuring days. So they enter a tavern. They're A rank, and looking for Paul. After reading his note. So as we mentioned earlier, her party they're originally from Paul's gang. What is it? The Wolves of the Black or the Wolves of the Black Fang, or
that sounds right.
Something like that. And so I really hate the blonde. I'm kind of like, what's the point of her character?
I know.
I'm like, does this have any significance, or as she, on several occasions, we see her
Getting it in.
Yeah, sometime with many partners.
At the same time.
Yeah, so, so, whatever, she's there. And Roxy is kind of warning the party, I believe, about Dead End. So she's still searching for Rudy. Is one of her more main concerns, along with finding
the rest of the family.
The family as well, but she's still really worried about Rudy. And so I guess they decide to search for the daughters.
So that's where they're gonna start, I guess. The next day they're in town, and it's kind of funny, I guess, watching the OVA and then this episode is you see, I guess, Roxy's perspective, because you kind of see her in the background of the OVA, watching Eris and Ruijerd spar. So it's funny to get her perspective on that now. And you also see her and how she narrowly misses Rudy as he's going through the alley.
So frustrating.
I was really ready for them to see each other in this moment, but I kind of appreciate that they didn't now.
Yeah. It was going to be interesting to see maybe how Eris felt, if she felt any type of way about meeting Roxy. Maybe she...
Oh, be jealous for sure.
Yeah. So they're on the search. Roxy and her new
travel companions.
She's kind of complaining about walking in on that girl all the time, and that girl's in turn making fun of her for
her romantic ideology.
Exactly right. And so they move along to the next city. It looks like
back to the gang, I guess, the Dead End group.
Yeah, back to the gang, and
they're stowed away at this point.
They're on the ship, in which we see Eris is incredibly seasick, and so I guess they get to the next city, and Rudy is going to pick up Ruijerd from the criminals, as they had kind of originally established and set up, and was part of the whole stowaway scenario. And so we see Rudy walking into this dungeon. He's kind of being escorted by these guards. It looks like he's a little bit nervous. This place is full of
seedy, I guess.
Yeah, and guards and all of that good stuff. And so he finally stumbles upon. They lead him to Ruijerd, sack over his head. God only knows how long he's been sitting there.
Yeah.
He pulls it off, and we see that Ruijerd is not happy. He knows there's some foul things going on here, in related to children. The beast people, children, looks like they've been kidnapped and are being sold there for, I'm sure, unsightly things. And obviously, Ruijerd, us knowing, he's not going to allow that.
No.
So he pretty much tells Rudy, like, this is what's going to happen. You don't have to get involved. I'm killing all these dudes.
Yeah.
And which he does. And so they're headed out. They free the kidnapped beast children. And so I believe I can't remember why they get split up. Rudy wants to go back for the
dog.
The dog that he sees in there as well.
The sacred beast.
The sacred beast, right. So he goes back in there and he frees him from... There's like some kind of magic barrier. He frees him and he's loving on him. He's fluffy, as we all would do. Would pet him and love on him some. Now, some beast people come in and mistake him loving on the dog for
perversion.
Yeah, perversion. And so they
honestly, I don't blame him.
Yeah, no, he was getting a little too into it. Yeah. And so they kidnap him, or they take him, they they believe him to have, I guess. I guess it was just they didn't like what he was.
They didn't like what he was doing to the sacred beast.
Yeah, so they take him captive. This is a pretty cool. It reminds me of like what is it? Kashyyyk in Star Wars. Where the Wookiees live. Mm-hmm. Like they live in the trees, kind of, and all these platforms and stuff, and he's being held in like this giant bird cage almost.
Completely naked.
Yeah, completely naked.
He does this bit about like, welcome to my apartment. Yeah. It's completely free to live here. Look at all my amenities.
Yeah. So love that. Yeah. So they're both. So yeah, him and the Beast are taken to the Beast Person village, and we see that he's captured. Yet, I guess this is his first time being separated from the group like that.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, and he's just kind of like, all right, what's gonna? I mean, he's kind of
just wait it out.
Yeah, wait it out. He's worried though. I think he's kind of worried about just because they don't know what's going on.
Sure. So after that Sacred Beast incident, he finds himself biding time in this prison, his cell, if you will, for days. And so he kind of does his best to progress through time, and eventually we get another prisoner brought in. His name is Geese. He ends up being a pretty fun character.
Yeah.
It kind of comes full circle with him too, which is nice. And
he's in there for cheating at dice, I believe.
Yeah. He specifically said gambling, and then Rudy started listing all these, I guess, gambling games we would be familiar with, like blackjack. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was dice. Which is kind of funny. There's this weird massaging scene though.
I don't know how to. I don't know why that was.
It could have not been in the anime, and I would have felt a lot better. If it didn't
that was weird. That was a weird scene.
But Rudy definitely puts on this like, I'm the boss of this cell.
Yeah.
Which was kind of funny. But eventually the two prisoners end up noticing like, hey, something smells like it's burning. Mm-hmm. And I guess to their dismay, the forest is caught on fire. So now's Rudy's time to make his escape. He had the capacity to escape at any point in time. He just didn't want it to make it worse for himself. Yeah. So he conjures a key. They get out. And I think this was a great moment to showcase some more character development for Rudy, because he chooses to stay and save the village with Geese instead of just leaving, because he felt pretty vindictive. Mm-hmm. They really did him wrong. He shouldn't have been in prison, and they didn't listen to him or give him any opportunity to, I guess, speak his part. Yeah. And so teaming up,
he notices that they're after the kids, and like it's these same guys coming to kidnap the Beast children. Mm-hmm. And so he, in classic mage master fashion, he kind of
his cumulonimbus.
Yeah, and starts pretty much takes out all the fire to the village, the forest, I should say.
And at this point, Gallus, who is the guy who let them stow away in the first place, is who they're fighting. So Gallus ends up being a pretty proficient swordsman. Yeah. And it gets pretty close, but thankfully the Sacred Beast comes in and teams up with Rudy. In between the Beast and Geese and Rudy himself, they manage to drop Gallus, and the village gives Rudy, I believe, a very well-deserved apology. Yeah. And we finally get back to full party. Mm-hmm. And Eris and Ruijerd ended up getting into their own little debacle.
Yeah, and they're kind of explaining all the why they were so late.
Mm-hmm. They had, I guess, a whole different misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually cut back to Roa at this point, and the Boreas family is experiencing some misfortune. Sauron, he is pinned with the full blame and is beheaded for it,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. I think that is not fair. I mean, certainly it was not his fault
Mm-hmm.
that this mana storm happened, or at least up to my understanding at this point. But and I can't help but think if this is just part of a coup.
That Philip was wanting. Yeah, Philip's a sneaky bastard.
If
So.
not him, someone else in the family.
Yeah,
If Philip's thinking about...
Because did we
committing
see
a coup-
Philip? I don't remember if we even see Philip during that.
Allegedly, towards the very end of the anime, it is told that Philip and Hilda were teleported together and they both died together.
Okay.
Allegedly, so I don't know. But that kind of concludes that episode.
So, yeah. So Philip, I'm curious as to. Hopefully that'll be explained later in the new season. But, yeah. So kicking off again. We're in the Beast Village. Kind of all's well there. Everyone's reunited. Happy. So Rudy, again gets caught peeping on Eris and the Beast people in the hot spring together.
Yeah, in a box. I think.
Yeah, he's hiding. He has a hole cut through this barrel or box, whatever
like
it
some
is.
Solid Snake style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that was funny. I guess some things never change, right?
Yeah, but it shows that the group is really acclimating well to, I believe, where they're at is Doldea village.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just kind of a funny moment, but Geese is locked up again already.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. And so, Eris and the Beast kids are really hitting it off, enjoying each other. And then, so we find out that, I guess the chieftain, I can't remember his name.
Geese?
He notices that, Geese, he notices that, Eris is wearing a ring that's from the village. And he asked about it, and he says Ghislaine had given this to me. Turns out Ghislaine is Geese's brother, right?
Geese is Ghislaine's brother, yeah.
Yeah, Ghislaine is Geese's sister. And immediate tension. Geese was not pleased to hear his sister's name.
No, she was kind of basically an animal. Like, she did not act civilized like the rest of the village.
Mm-hmm.
She refused to talk, she refused to learn, and she eventually forsake the village.
Yeah, left on to do her own thing.
Which Geese even states that he was kind of happy it happened.
Because he didn't have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of, almost like he was embarrassed for that to be his sister. That's kind of sad.
It is sad.
Eris, who loves Ghislaine, they're very close. She doesn't like to hear that, so they kind of lash out at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the daughters step in immediately, and well, I guess they're kind of caught up in the conflict. But Eris kind of explains to Geese that she, Ghislaine has been learning like reading, writing, arithmetic. She's a sword king
And an elementary spellcaster.
Yeah, and an elementary spellcaster, and
He's kind of floored by
he's
that.
stunned. Yeah. So things kind of settle between them, and Eris actually begins training the chieftain Geese's his daughter, who, like Eris at one point, was hard-headed, not willing to be taught really. So it's another full circle moment we see. Right? Yeah. So love to see that. And so they've been in the town for long enough. I feel like they're getting ready to leave.
Yeah, I think they were there for like a rainy season.
Yeah, yeah. Once I guess the flooding.
It's like 3 months of rain.
Yeah.
And they were ready to leave after that.
So of course everyone has gotten close with each other, especially Eris and the Geese's daughters. She is upset when she learns they're trying to leave.
Yeah, it causes a whole argument.
Tina, I believe, is her name. And so they get into it. And another cool moment where I guess we see some Rudius. He
gets really close with the beast.
Yeah. And we kind of think like I was like, is he gonna stick around? Is he gonna be part of the gang?
Yeah, because they talk about how I guess the beast only appears once every like once a calamity is about to happen, and he usually chooses a master or a companion. And I felt like that was Rudy, but we don't really see much of him after this.
Yeah.
Which I was sad about. I really liked the beast. He reminded me of like a Chow.
Yeah, he was.
Like
he was
fuzzy dog.
Exactly. So, eventually, Tina and Eris end up.
They patch it over.
They make up. They kind of. I think they exchanged some gifts they had made. They had like carved figurines out of some wood, and so cool scene. They're getting ready to leave, and Geese and Eris, or I guess he asks Eris if they can spar. Is that?
Yeah, to like be closer with Ghislaine, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah. And so they end up sparring super quick.
Yeah, it was like a samurai style.
Yeah, but I guess no, they understood something more about each other after it. Right. So
and then at this point, Geese breaks out and he's like, "I'm going with you guys," which is kind of funny.
And so they hit the road again, and then they're just traveling in their carriage, and they stumble upon these stones kind of sticking out of the ground, tombstone looking kind of. But I guess it's just like information panels, if you will.
And it introduces the seven gods. And I think
the seven powers. There's the technique god, dragon god, battle god, demon god, death god, sword god, and the north god. And so,
seven most powerful forces in the realm.
And that's really, I think that's, they just kind of touch on it for a little bit.
Yeah, we really don't get much this season about them. Later on, we learn about the dragon god, but I wish we got more. So at long last, the gang makes it to Milis or Milishon, and Geese takes his leave, and as he's leaving, he asks, "Hey, why don't you drop by the Adventurers Guild when you can?" And we are finally back in human territory, which is great. A lot of progress, making it across a whole continent is kind of what they made it sound like.
Yeah. How much time has passed now?
I believe a year. I think at this point in the story...
year and a half?
I think at this point, Rudius is 12. So quite a lot has happened just from the Mana Storm incident. But Rudius is still very strong in his resolve to clear Ruijerd's name. And while they make it to town, Rudy realizes, I haven't written to my family. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, even once.
And once he starts that process, he spots what seems to be a kidnapping in process. So he follows them and decides he needs to hide his, I guess, face. And the first thing he finds is a pair of panties, of course.
Of course.
So Panties on face, he takes on the whole group, only to find the leader is his dad. Which at this point I was like, nice. But it is not a sweet reunion by any means. It's been a long time since they've seen each other, and Paul looks rough.
You could tell he's gone through it. He's
got like bags under his eyes. Clearly, I mean, when he comes in to the, I guess, conflict, he's drunk. So he's definitely been hitting the booze quite a bit to deal with this situation.
Oh yeah.
So Paul asks Rudy to, recount his journey, and of course Rudy doesn't want his dad to worry, and just to feed his own ego a little bit, I'm sure he embellishes things, and he seems to talk in a way that he had fun.
Cheerfully telling this tale.
Yeah, and so this frustrates Paul more than he seems to be impressed or pleased.
Yeah. And
he ends up roasting Rudy pretty hard for adventuring instead of searching for any of the other victims. His first question, I believe, is, did you think to search for any of the others while you were up there?
Yeah.
And I thought this was pretty harsh. I mean, he was doing his best just to survive and make it back home on an already long journey. And even though we are really the only ones and Rudy's the only ones who knows what his true age is, I think he should realize it's the 12-year-old kid you're talking to.
Yeah.
So, of course, he wouldn't realize. But the situation kind of continues to devolve further until Rudy starts taking jabs at Paul, because one of the girls he ended up fighting, she's basically wearing like an arbor bikini, and he's like, you two seem pretty close.
Do you forget you have a wife?
Yeah. And so Paul lets loose, and they both kind of fight each other, but at this point Rudy uses his demon eye to really leverage the combat, and Rudy takes this time to knock some sense into Paul. And
this was a cool moment. Paul takes a pretty good swing at him, and using his foresight, he dodges it and blasts with some kind of wind. He blasts Paul to the ceiling.
It was cool, and then he just jumps on him and just starts wailing on him. But to make this even more painful, Norn walks in on it all, and Rudy was just happy to see his little sister, and she sees him as this monster.
He had never seen her. He hadn't seen her since she was a baby.
She probably doesn't even know him.
Yeah.
And so at this point, Rudy's pretty emotionally defeated, and he basically makes his plans to leave. Initially, they wanted to stay and make some money. Apparently, the Adventurers Guild here pays really well for their higher-end jobs, and I guess at this point, Paul, he's always kind of seemed to have a hard time communicating, and at this point he communicates the frustration is the fact that he left Rudy a message at the Adventurer Guilds, and I don't know if Rudy didn't know that there was a place you could check those or what, but he didn't see the message, and Paul's created a whole group, a search and rescue team, while he's off adventuring. So this kind of humiliates Rudy, and he takes his leave from the scene. And I don't know, this was pretty rough for me. And I just wonder, how do you bounce back from something like that? Especially when you haven't seen each other in so long.
Years. And that's kind of the first, how it goes, the first go about. It's rough.
How the OVA ends, it kind of picks up on this scene where you see Rudy. So I thought that was an interesting tie-in, but Rudy sitting defeated on his bed, and Eris and Ruger do their best to comfort him, which I thought was pretty sweet. And I don't know, figuring out how to best navigate that situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Eris is fired up, and she's like, "Where's he at? I'll go find him right now." And Rude just kind of like, "Leave. You need to stay out of family squabbles, kind of."
Yeah. So that's kind of how that ends, and we pick it right back up with Paul's perspective.
Yeah. Rudy's kind of reflecting on everything. Seeing Norn and how she was just kind of looking at him like a monster, and it was just obviously a super painful time for Rudy, and just seeing Paul, you could tell he was hitting the booze super hard.
Yeah,
he's a different man from this grueling experience that he's been through, and it's really cool because you do get to see Paul like it's kind of like a little you just kind of see him from little time. You see him from the beginning to forming the group to him reuniting several family members.
Yeah, all the while like solo parenting Norn.
Yeah.
So
it's just real tough for him. So Geese, though, I mean, he sees Paul and he's kind of trying to talk some sense into him, and to see things as like, Rudius is a kid, and you're like, you just saw your son in one piece.
Can't you be thankful for that?
Yeah, be thankful for that. It could have been so much worse. Yeah. Like, what if he had come to you missing appendages, or...
And he kind of hallucinates that at one point, too. I guess he was really drunk.
Yeah, and that hit him hard. He was drunk and reflecting, and, like, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, he was like, sober up and talk to your son tomorrow.
Yeah. His expectations of the kid were just so high. So it was nice to see Geese come and do that. I super appreciate that, and he earned some points for me as a character.
Yeah. He was kind of just in my book as a comedic relief character, but he really did himself some justice there. And Paul really became a victim of his circumstances, and I think the worst way. He really kind of he lost himself. You could definitely tell it wasn't the Paul we knew.
Confident, and he was defeated,
drunk, and bitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bitter's the big thing for me because he seemed so easygoing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paul ends up interrupting Dead End's breakfast. Eris steps up immediately, classic Eris fashion, and to defend Rudy. But of course,
Ruiger just kind of like, let's give him some alone
time.
Picks her up.
So sober Paul comes to apologize, and but he also mentions there's it's not going to be a home for.
Yeah, Roa's not what you think it is.
Yeah, there's not going to be a home to return to. Which is crazy because they all had no idea. So
no, that was their goal. Make it back to Roa. They didn't know what to expect. So that was an interesting turn.
Yeah, but Rudy's. I mean, he's committed. He's going to keep his promise, and he sees some of Paul's pained expressions and starts reflecting himself, kind of his past life, and he kind of has a little bit of a moment there, and
it was pretty cool. I think this showed a lot on Rudy's side because he was like, "Can we just pretend yesterday didn't happen?"
That was so nice.
It was such a good moment.
He gives him a hug. He tells him like, "Hey, come here." Gives him a big hug. Oh, that was wholesome. That was super wholesome.
And then I feel my eyes like.
I know, Paul was just sobbing.
God, that was a sweet moment.
Paul was that was I had to.
I know it was a tearjerker.
Yeah,
just talking about it, I feel it. But this was the moment I was expecting. That's what I thought their meeting would be like, and why I was so excited to see it was Paul that he was fighting against in the first place.
Oh yeah,
definitely a curveball there.
Absolutely,
good character progression. I think Rudy and Paul do a good job at pulling each other to higher heights.
Yeah,
because they're both brothers in their perversions.
Absolutely. So Rudy he kind of just speaks on, I'm going to take Eris back home, and then I'm going to find the rest of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's kind of how they go about that. And he's like, and then they kind of take their separate ways. And
yeah, he gives him money to go. He's like, here's your
he gives
money
him some
for
traveling
both.
money, a letter of recommendation, I believe, and back on another boat.
Woohoo! Which Iris was thrilled.
Yeah.
She got really sick.
But Rudy
but
this
this time
time
Rudy
as well,
got
yeah.
sick too, which was funny. So transitioning from our boat sick party, we get some insight on Roxy and how this journey is going for her. And at this point, she is reminiscing with, unfortunately, the insufferable horseman. I don't know, I feel like this moment was meant for us to kind of like him more. I still feel the same about the horse. He does go about how, like, I have a family now and doing everything for my family, but it just felt so underhanded. I still don't have much respect for him, but
it would. I don't know if there's anything he could do
to get that from me.
Yeah.
He brings up Dead End, and for the first time, Roxy is notably panicked. Like, it shows like a shot of her underneath the table, and she's like
trembling a little
violently shaking. But eventually that passes, and they conclude their conversation, and Roxy makes up her mind and decides to go return to her village. The horseman really leaned into family and its importance, and interesting backstory into Roxy and why she left her town. She felt very alienated of all the demons there. She's the only one that couldn't communicate telepathically, and so she decided to drop by only for a moment, immediately feeling very uncomfortable being there. She notes that the villagers look at her like they look at outsiders, and she just knows she's never going to fit in there.
Yeah. Sad seeing her parents.
That dynamic is so sad because her parents love her so much, and I think the moment that really hit me is she looks off to like the side, and there's like her little toy horse that she played, or her little doll, whatever it was, and the book that she used to learn from, and they just had it on display, and so that was a little rough, but I feel like it was a good moment for her to see past a language barrier. I don't know what you'd even call it. And gave herself a nice moment with her parents, and finally committed to visiting more often.
Once
it settles down. Yeah. She said originally it was like once every 20 years. Yeah. But at this point, she, I think, is going to commit to sooner visits than that.
Yeah.
But, and I forgot to mention this whenever Rudy and the gang were in the village, but at their departure, I thought it was really funny because Rudy asked her dad if he could call her father-in-law.
No, with the plain, it's just immediate response, no. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, the most like flat no. And on on Roxy's exit, her mother was like, "Why don't you bring that sweet Rudy boy?" And her father,
I won't allow it.
Yeah, no, don't. But yeah, it was a nice moment. Her parents and her really making progress, and Roxy having some insight on how Rudy's doing and that whole process. And at this point, she also pieces it all together that Rudy is in Dead End, and that Sigurd, that she's heard nothing but terrible things about, is adventuring with someone she really cares about. So that kind of hit her pretty hard.
Yeah.
And at this point, Roxy realizes Rudy's in as good of a hands as he can be, and she dedicates her search to the girls. Lilia, Aisha, and Zenith. And yeah.
Yeah. So it's still, it makes me frustrated how they keep They just keep missing each other.
Oh, I know.
Obviously, like, I mean, it's been a while since Rudy had left her home village, but you know, like he was there at one point, and then they were in the same place at one point. But I mean, she finally pieced it together that he's in dead end, and he's probably doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's in good hands, and she's commits to finding the women. So yet another village from the man god. You know, Rudy's kind of been reflecting on his bad attitude in all of their meetings, and wants to turn a new leaf. So he asks for insight on his family. So it's like I want to say this is the first time he's kind of directly asked for
help.
Yeah, for help from the man god. I mean, the man god he's always just kind of like giving him some advice, but this is the first time he's like, I really want to find my family. Like, what can you tell me? And so
so he finally trusts him this time.
He agrees to trust him entirely, and yet again the man god gives him another cryptic message on how to find his sister in the next town, and another vomit-filled morning starts the last leg of their ocean voyage.
Yeah.
Some more cool architecture.
This feels like old school Japanese. I thought the buildings there were very interesting. And this was the village Roxy was actually tutoring in.
Yes. Yes. So.
And Rudy was so excited because he heard that they had rice here.
Yeah, finally get some of that. So, to fulfill the first portion of the prophecy that the man god had kind of given him, Rudy notices he's being followed by immediately we recognize that as Aisha, the kid's sister. And so he's kind of leads her into like this alleyway, right?
Yeah, he reads it as an ambush. He's like, I'm already here and someone's hunting me down.
Yeah, but then he overhears something going on in the near distance. So he goes to intervene and sees that two guards are messing with the sister.
Mm-hmm.
So he immediately, I think he just kind of grabs her and blasts the ground, and they just take off.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very careful not, because that was another part, right, to not reveal his name.
Yeah, which he quickly realizes is because Aisha sees him as this horrible pervert.
Yeah.
And she has no respect for her brother. So interesting dynamic.
Yeah, he brings her back to the hideout and is talking to her a little bit. So she's resting, and ends up he gets invited. He knock at the door. He ends up getting invited to the palace from Roxy. So he's super pumped about that. He's I'm not even gonna bother having these guys come with me.
Yeah, I'm leaving right now. Yeah,
it's Roxy. I'm excited to see her. He eagerly heads in, and instead of being greeted to Roxy, he's greeted to the prince, the seventh son, and he steps on. I guess these guys pull a trap door from under him, and he falls right into this hole.
Yeah, and in that room is Lilia as well.
Yes,
Held captive.
Sees Lilia as well, and she's been held captive, and he falls into this like dug in hole in the ground, huge, in which there's actually a magic barrier on the ground. So magic is useless. Pax is his name. Pax.
And he uses this as a bait to make Roxy his sex slave.
Yeah.
Fucked up.
I know. As if. Yeah, he was annoying to begin with.
Adds a whole dark element to him.
Oh yeah. And so Rudy's trapped down there. Pax is using Rudy and Lilia both as bait. Mm-hmm. And Rudy's kind of gone. He's having a little bit of monologue over his screw-ups, he's been captured yet again. So I guess in the beginning of the vision, the man god mentioned putting his new demon eye to good use, which he didn't do, and Rudy's kind of like,
yeah, could he have seen through that?
I don't. I think he could have. I think if he would have,
if he'd been thinking to focus his 2 seconds,
if
ahead.
he would have been a little bit more aware, as opposed to blindly trusting this invitation that he believed from Roxy.
Yeah, I think
he
that
could
was
have.
his.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that just that kind of thing, that he probably could have gotten out of that if he would have better listened to the man god's instruction.
Yeah, and not just got caught up in the invitation from Roxy.
Yeah.
He definitely let his emotions rule that decision.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we transition back to, I guess, Lilia and Aisha's experience through the Mana Storm catastrophe. Lilia's request to speak with Roxy is what leads them to her capture. They end up in Shinru, or at least close to it. So she put 2 and 2 together that Roxy was here. Maybe this is a safe place to wait and bide time. And we transition back to Rudius, and he does that apartment bit again.
Yeah.
Although I like that the show is self-aware that this was kind of a stale joke.
Yeah.
And laughed at itself for doing it a second time.
Absolutely.
But while Rudius is down there waiting for anything, Zampa, who is the third prince of the Shinro Kingdom, asks of this demon figure, which he found on his possession, because he had been handing out Ruijerd statues to everyone he helped to kind of help his positive perception.
A little cool moment. Whenever we had first seen that the seventh prince had purchased this Roxy figurine, and he's showing it to Roxy. We see what is Zimba? Is that what's his name? The third prince.
Zanba.
Yeah, he flashes into the screen for a second to check out the figurine. So that was just a little cool thing.
It was so funny how deep he got into the mechanics of it, because it was like detachable.
Yeah,
and
it's funny that Rudy did all that. Of course,
they like bonded over the. It kind of stroked Rudy's ego to hear him talk about how impressed he was.
Yeah, but also he removed Zeniba removed like
one of the
moles, and Rudy was like,
"That's what made it so erotic."
Yeah, yeah.
Well, which was really funny, and he's like, "You really are the master."
Yeah.
So that was an interesting little bit. Definitely gushing over the details of the figure, and Zamba is essentially worshiping Rudius at this point for his craftsmanship.
Teach me.
Yeah. It really takes you out of the situation, which I thought was pretty funny. But transitioning back, we get to Eris and Ruijerd, and it turns out that Pax has been doing this to many people's families. And
the guards as well, including
yeah.
Yeah.
So no one's safe, and he just does this for his own pleasures and motives. And Ruijerd tasks Eris with protecting Aisha, just say, hey, wait, I can infiltrate the castle. And Zeniba, in his cringy, typical form, he assures Rudy Pax will be taken care of for the price of learning the art of making these figures. And it turns out he has these crazy powers where he can
strength. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Because he breaks his arm at one point with a touch.
Just a touch.
And he's known for ripping people's heads off. Which was wild. So Zeniba drags his whining brother out of the bedroom, threatening to rip his head off in that moment if he does not comply.
Yeah.
Wild. So after finally submitting, Pax, his arm's broken anyways by a single touch. And everything ended up working out. Even though we deviated from the original prophecy from the man god, the families are reunited. There's a sincere moment, completely ruined by Zeniba's overzealous desire to be Rudy's apprentice. And Lilia is reunited, or excuse me, Lilia reunites Rudius with his holy relic. Which is great.
A pleasant surprise from him.
He was so, I don't know if he was happier to have those panties back or that hand-carved amulet from Sylphie.
Yeah.
But he was just like, thank you. And there was another touching moment where Lilia really talks to Rudius and his progress and how good of a kid he was even in those days. And she kind of ruins the moment herself by calling her daughter comparatively dull.
Yeah.
Which is pretty brutal. And then it ends up just being a nice twist of emotions all around, ups and downs.
But so we know that Paul and Norn are together safe, and then now Lilia and Aisha are being sent to the same place Paul is at. So I love that. That's huge. So now we're just kind of left wondering about Zenith, though.
Yeah, I know. So she's kind of last on the list.
Yeah, which makes me. I was worried about that. Because I'm like, not Zenith. Like,
I know.
Please be okay, Zenith. She's so sweet. Just great, loving mother, wife. You know, even when Paul doesn't always deserve it. So
I know.
So really cool area here that our team is kind of being led to. Like a frozen mountainous region.
This episode,
a lot to unpack here. A lot goes on here, and so right off the bat we see the foreshadowing of death.
Yeah, at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, so we're just kind of like already right off the bat, like what's gonna happen? They make it into the next town. Ruigard and Eris are sparring as they per usual, and at this point, we can clearly see Eris is improving tremendously, all the time, and Ruigard kind of grants her
the title of a true warrior.
Yeah, like the title of a true warrior, which is huge for the Superb clan to...
coming from them, huge compliment.
Yeah. So he really looks at her like an equal. And so they progress on. Just kind of spot some dragons in the sky, and they're kind of... Eris like, I want to fight one.
Yeah.
And Rudy's kind of like, they're huge, they're terrifying, they hang out in packs. Let's just do our best to go around them for now.
Yeah, only the best warriors can handle one. And I think the dragon god is the only person who's handled more than one at a time.
Yeah. And so they're kind of working their way around this mountain path, and so Ruigard and Eris just kind of stop dead in their tracks. And Rudius can't really see what's going on. He's looking into the distance, and we see two figures kind of walking. Their ox just randomly throws itself off the side of the mountain. So super tense. And I believe at first they don't even these two people that we've never seen before. I don't think there's even any words spoken. Right? They just kind of pass each other. And maybe Ruigard tells Rudy
to be completely still.
Yeah, do not move a muscle. Be completely still.
And he just strikes up conversation.
Yeah, he's like, what is he? Yeah, he kind of, I guess he asks him something. I thought
he asks if they were responsible for the Mana Storm catastrophe, and they said no. He asks if he's affiliated with the Man God. And he said yes, and he said, I knew you were a disciple of his.
and it's in an instant. This person is just
goes for the throat,
and it's so this is really really telling because this whole time we've seen Ruijerd has been
just eviscerates everything.
Everybody. No one is a match for him. He's a nickname Dead End. He's feared all across the land, and rightfully so. Like, to this point, nobody has rivaled him. Mm-hmm. But he's in combat with this other person here, and he's doing everything he can to even survive it, and he's quickly overpowered.
Yeah.
Quickly overpowered, and so at this point,
so Ruijerd's tossed aside immediately, and then Eris comes in next, and he pretty much grabs her by the blade. Mm-hmm. He's like, "You're not too bad," and throws her against the wall.
So she's kind of like incapacitated. I'm sure some broken bones and whatnot. She's alive. We don't really know if Ruijerd is or not. He's just kind of face down in the snow. Eris is at least alive, but she's not able to move.
And he has this crazy technique where he uses this like blast of wind, and it completely ruins Rudy's lungs, which he believed would keep him from spellcasting. Ironically enough, it doesn't. But it kept him from healing himself because he can't heal without.
So it's like the one thing. It seems like that's the one of the very few things that he can't do without the incantation. So the cool moment where he showcases his
he shoots that fireball.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. I really love that, and so and I really like this because a lot of the time Rudy he'll manipulate the elements, and so he's like having a hard time breathing. He like pushes himself up, like he gets like the earth beneath him and like makes him kind of rises him up, and he like holds out his hand and he like makes his fireball and he adds some other elements to it, and it's like this giant purple just
ball of destruction.
Yeah, ball of destruction, and looks incredibly powerful, and he hurls this at Orsted, yes, at Orsted, and he
conjures this like mirror.
Yeah, and he like I don't know what he just dispels it essentially.
But it does crack it, and he makes note that he may be one of them, or I can't remember who he compared his powers to. I don't know if it was Laplas or someone.
I think it was Laplas.
But he said, I don't think I've seen a more powerful caster than Laplas.
Yeah, he's like he might be on par with him,
which is wild for someone so young.
Yeah, and so Orsted grabs Rudy.
Just
hand right through his chest, and Eris is just sick and she's distraught. Rudy's dead. He drops him. Rudy's clearly dead. He gaping, bloody hole in his chest, and now we see him back in his original form with the man god again, and there's again a hole in his chest, and he's just kind of like, did I just die? Is this it? And he's pretty down, but I was surprised that he wasn't. He was kind of almost like, at least I got to experience this.
Yeah, even though he was apathetic, he was thankful. Mm-hmm. Again, just solid character progression and growth this whole time.
And I was curious here. I was like, is he dead? Like, is he dead?
So,
like, how is he going to come out of this?
And we get some interesting backstory between Orsted and his relationship with the man god, which I still have a lot of questions about. Because I don't want to say conveniently enough, but Orsted's the only person the man god has no idea like where he is, what he's doing, what he wants to do, and so it was a complete fluke that they crossed paths. And
yeah, because Rudy's like, why didn't you warn me? And he's like, I had no idea.
Yeah, and then he even makes a point, because he continues to tell him more about Orsted, and he's a cursed individual, and I believe he's afflicted with like 4 curses. And he said if he didn't have those 4 curses, he could potentially rule this whole world with the amount of power he has.
Yeah.
and Rudy was even like, you know a lot about someone who you apparently can't keep tabs on.
Yeah.
So there's some weirdness there that I'm really interested in delving more into. But
So, as Rudy lie there, I guess Nanashi, the companion that was with Orsted, who again, interestingly enough, was wearing. So Orsted himself was kind of dressed in the same like traditional white that the other two. So, the person that I don't know if we ever, I can't remember his name, but who attacked Ghislaine and all them whenever that
who
first
got a
happened.
mask.
Yeah, and now she had a mask just like he did. So there's got to be some correlation between them there. But she kind of mentions to him, like maybe he's important. Maybe we shouldn't just kill him and leave him here to die.
Nana Hoshi, I believe is her name. Yeah, she convinces either Orsted to heal them or convinces Orsted to let her heal them. But they wake up. Wild episode.
A lot of stuff going on. Oh, I was so sad, like seeing how upset Eris was, and
It really shows how close they've grown with each other throughout the experiences they'd shared from the moment he began tutoring her through exploring, at this point, 2 continents together, and
spent about almost 2 years together, living with each other every day. Like on the road, adventuring. So
a lot has passed, and I just can't help but wonder what the man god's motives are. But I'm sure we'll get into that as the show progresses, as the next season is released. But we are pulled back into a very strange nightmare of Roa twisting into Orsted murdering Rudius's true self, and this wakes Rudy to a jolt, and he's woken to Ruijerd also inquiring on who the man god is, and Rudy gives some additional insight. I guess he's one of the old gods. And being the man god and the dragon god's lost battle, as well as Ruijerd's fading curse. So some good news, the fact that he shaved his hair is weakening the curse that Laplace has put on all the Superds, which I thought was interesting. Although seemingly very positive news, had a very complex reaction to Ruijerd. He seemed almost... It seemed like he was going to cry. And I don't know if it was out of happiness. Very interesting. But they finally made it to their destination, and lo and behold, it's a desolate plain. And only their memories really remain.
just like Paul, kind of like how Paul warned him.
And this moment was pretty sad, but Ruijerd is taking his leave. He fulfilled his promise, and he thanked Rudius, and he thanked him for his compassion and the adventure, and he takes a moment to compliment Eris on her talent, and he asked if he could treat them as children for one last moment, and they shared a really heartwarming but painful goodbye.
That was sad. Whenever he was like, "Can I just treat you guys as children one last time?"
And you even see Eris try and grab his hand back whenever he was done, patting her head.
Yeah.
And he parts them with his final words of, hope we meet again.
I'm not good at goodbyes.
It's so probably one of the sadder moments of this anime, and I thought the asking if he could treat them as a child one last time shows how he really sees them now versus how he saw them in the beginning. Because he saw them as people he needed to protect, and now he views them as equals, if not more so.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's ironic that all the warnings of a Sigurd in the beginning of the anime transitioned into giving us such a good character, and how well he melded into the world.
Absolutely.
So they make their way through the camp, and this bittersweet moment is met with basically another bittersweet moment with a nice kind of wholesome moment in between them. Eris and Ghislaine are reunited, and this is quickly soured by the news of Philip and Hilda and Saros being lost. Philip and Hilda, they were teleported and passed in a conflict zone, and we know of Saros's unfortunate demise. And an arranged marriage for the sake of the people is proposed, and Eris understandably takes this pretty hard and asks for some solitude.
Yeah, it's rough.
And I think you hear her crying. Like Rudius leaves the tent, you hear her just break down. That was rough. And so we see Rudy making his way over to the list of missing people. Sylphie is on the list, but thankfully
she's
not.
Been marked out, right? I believe, as in.
I think she's missing but not dead.
Right.
But it did seem like her name was marked out. And same for Zenith, so not down and out, but still out. And so at this point, Eris enters the tent and confesses her desires for a family. And I didn't know what to say at this point.
It's pretty big. Loaded moment.
Yeah, no kidding. This moment alone has a lot to unpack. Because their bond really has become so strong throughout the course of their adventures and their time together. And it would have been a touching moment. I just don't know. It feels weird that they're second cousins, I think. Whatever. But I think the big thing for me is that, and another show of Rudius's growth is, I think if this were presented to him the first time he made his advance on her, he wouldn't have thought twice about it. But he gave her a firm no. Like, we agreed on me being 15. I feel like I'm taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
Because you just found out your mom, dad, and grandpa are dead. And you're
all alone, essentially.
Yeah. So, of course, you're latching on to the one constant you have in your life right now. And
yeah.
I thought it was very big of Rudius to kind of... Well, he didn't put his foot down too hard because she asked for it in like a beast person way, and he was like, okay. He dropped his wine glass and he was down for it.
Yeah.
But, which was funny in itself, but... we go to the next morning, and Rudius is on top of the world.
He comes out of his tent, stretching. He's like, "Oh, what's going on, people?
What a day to be alive!"
Yeah, it's like, what a time to be alive.
I'm a normie now.
Yeah, he exactly. He kind of takes a walk around. He's just strolling through the camp. He's like, "All right, that's enough of that. I'm gonna get back to my girlfriend." Mm-hmm. And he goes back. He rips the sheets off the bed, expecting to go round two, and
empty bed,
and then just a mass lock of hair, a ton of hair on the floor, and a note is left for him,
and an incredibly brief note at that.
Yeah.
I believe all it said was something to the effect of, "We are not equals at this moment. I need to go."
Yeah.
And that was it. No information on where she's going. All he knows is that Eris, essentially he's pieced together that Eris has chopped off her hair and left on a journey with Ghislaine. And now, finally, for the first time, Rudius is all alone. Mm-hmm. He did have some solitude in his cage, but he knew it was only a matter of time. But at this point, Ruijerd's gone. maybe their paths will cross again, but it's not going to be a permanent thing.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going on with Eris. So,
Because like Austin said, the note was extremely brief. So, he's kind of like, she's left him. He's kind of left feeling like, was I not good enough? Was, all kinds of things are going through his head.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we kind of see, it shows us Ghislaine and Eris kind of traveling together and doing some adventuring of their own, it seems like. And Ghislaine mentions something to Eris, and in which she kind of responds like, whenever Rudy's and I hands, were together, like his were smaller than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kind of reflected on like, he's younger than me, and I've just been so heavily relying on him. And
I think him dying and her witnessing that really affected her.
yeah, absolutely. So she was just kind of reflecting on that, and in which, so it kind of seems like she's doing this for her in order to help Rudy as well.
Like Rudy deserves someone who can protect him like he does me.
And that's what she's trying to. She wants to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she's off doing that. It's just she didn't convey that very well to Rudy.
No, and maybe she didn't have the strength to.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
But
I wish we did.
I know, because Rudy, cut back to him. He is going through it. He's not getting out of bed. He's having a ton of flashbacks. It seems like he's slowly slipping back to his...
Definitely the worst regression of the series.
Yeah, he's slipping back to his old recluse self. And he's just not wanting to get out of bed. He is defeated. He's distraught. We see the butler guy that was from the manor, who was also like one of the surviving guys. He was trying to like say, Rudy, like we could really use you. Everyone's out here working every day. Like we could use your magic to help the rain and crops grow. And
in a very polite way, he said, "We're running out of tents. You need to start contributing."
Yeah, and it kind of just fell on deaf ears. It seemed like. So. Eris and Ghislaine venture onward. Eris, she continually reflects back on the time she spent with Rudy, and was really dead set on just becoming stronger for him. We see that Rugert is he's making his own progress in continuing to clear his old clan's name, his people's name. As he reveals himself to these people after kind of helping them out with an issue, and they're not afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. Pretty wholesome moment in that he's succeeding in this impossible task in which he had set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
So now so we cut to the some of the people that Dead End had encountered. Remember the positive impact that they've had. We kind of reflect on Roxy's wish to reunite the missing Grey Rats.
Mm-hmm.
The somber mood is a little broken up a little bit whenever Lilia and Aisha are reunited with Paul. We get to see
nice
that.
moment.
That was much needed moment because it's getting pretty bummed out.
Yeah.
And we see with the help of the
Pika. The demon.
Yeah,
king.
the demon. Yeah. Keisha Rishiki.
She pays her tab basically. She's just like the rest of
that
her
was
money.
that was a pretty funny moment. Kind of like
Yeah.
she was able to outdrink all those. This tiny little thing was able to outdrink all those people, and but yeah, so Roxy essentially pays her tab, and she repays her
by locating the Grey Rats.
Yeah, she at least gives her Zenith's. Was it Zenith's location?
She could not give her an exact, but an approximate. So she said she's somewhere in the labyrinth city of Rapon.
Yeah.
And
In which it kind of pans to, seems like some labyrinth and lair of some sort.
looks like a dungeon, yeah.
And I was like, oh no! I was like, what is going on with Zenith? I was like, there better not be a hair harmed on her head.
I know.
Yeah. So there's he's still pretty frustrated, pretty beaten up.
Rudy's really living in his past right now. And the bullying was pretty harsh. We really got to see, because I think they showed clips of him being like tied up naked in front of the school, but you see how it happened.
Yeah. Which would be traumatizing,
not for anybody.
Yeah.
And there's some mild frustration that he's kind of taken for granted his past situation. Like, he did have people that cared about him. And
his family.
Yeah.
His
parents were supportive.
Yeah.
Considering how he treated them, I was thinking they were just as bad as everyone else. But his parents were honestly really sweet, and they were like, "We're gonna get those kids expelled." And his mom like gave him his dinner with a nice note. And she's like, "I don't raise."
All my sons are strong.
Yeah. It was just wholesome parents.
So that was a nice scene. Real interestingly, we get to see what looks to be a silver-haired Sylphie. It seems like she's at the Magic University of Renoa.
Yeah. In the after credits, we get to see some Sylphie. I believe. I mean, it's alluded to be just because she talks of Rudius and how he was a sage level watercaster at the age of 5, and everyone at Renoa was like, "That's preposterous."
Yeah, they're like, "That's interesting if true."
Yeah. Big if true. And so I'm interested at what happens next. And it was nice to see Rudy, I guess, after reflecting on his past, has realized, I need to go find my mom. Like, I can sulk as long as I want.
So it's really, whenever he kind of reflects on their relationship on a little bit more personal level, that was really nice to see. Like, there was once where you could tell she was super tired, and he was like, "Hey, like, I'll handle this," and he kind of starts bossing everyone around. He's like, "Mom, you go take a nap."
That was really nice.
That was so nice, and I was glad we got to see a little bit their relationship on a little bit more personal of a level.
I think in a roundabout way, he realized, like, I had good parents in my last life. I still have good parents. I should really step up now.
Yeah. I didn't even really realize it like that. So it's interesting when you say that, because now that you say that, I'm like, dang, like, I think that's really what he was trying to do. Like, I didn't appreciate the parents I had in my last life. They're dead. I'll never see them again. While I still have a chance, I want to try to make things right with the family I have now.
Absolutely. So at this point, I'm just left with a lot of questions. Like, season 2 is coming out soon, as of when we are filming this. So
shouldn't have to wait too long.
Yeah.
So what are some things? Okay, so what do you think season 2 is going to be like? What do we think we're going to see in season 2? Predictions.
I think Renoa for sure. I think we're going to see some huge magical growth. I think we're going to get some Sylphie in the mix. What I'm anticipating happening is, Rudy and Eris's relationship kind of was like this.
Yeah.
And now they're diverging.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same with Sylphie. And then there's going to be some sort of moment where he has to choose, or there's some sort of conflict. And Roxy may even be in the mix too.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some time skippage. I think we're going to get an adult, I guess a 15-year-old Rudy in season 2.
So that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if how much time skip do you think we're going to see? So
I think we're going to hit a 15 Rudy.
Man, and so has he still? Do you think has he still not rekindled with Eris at this time, or?
I'm going to guess not in the beginning.
Wow, man.
I think he's going to. I think the first probably couple episodes are going to be finding Zenith going to school.
Okay.
And I think somewhere in the middle, after he's had some time to get closer to Sylphie, that Eris will get in the picture.
Well, he dang sure better find Zenith, and she better not be hurt.
I agree.
Mom, that's the anime mom of The year
2023 anime mong. So, what do you have? I'm also gonna throw it out there. I think we're gonna get some Battle Mage. I've been waiting.
You think so? Okay.
I think we're gonna get it.
We haven't seen, especially more so at the end. We were really kind of left with. We don't even see a sword in his hands, not even to train at all. So
No, I kind of gave up on it when he got his staff. I was like, okay.
yeah, but so I definitely think we're gonna see some time skippage. Obviously, there's gonna be the school Renoa in Renoa there. I mean, literally, Sophie was.
That was the whole purpose.
Yeah.
So a whole season's worth of effort and roller coaster plot. Because I think by episode 3 we've committed to me and Sophie are going to school together, and look at what's happened.
And I'm scared. I'm scared that since we haven't seen Xena, I don't know. I just have a very bad feeling.
Since she couldn't find her, I am a little concerned as to.
There's got to be a reason for. There's a reason for that.
What if she turns evil?
I'm just like, I hope she's. I don't know. Like, what if she turns evil? You know, there's I don't know. There's no telling. Okay, so I definitely think you're right. I think we're gonna see some strained air. I mean, we're gonna see some competition between Sylph and Eris. I'm really hoping that they even reunite. I'm like, surely, like, before 5 more years. Or I guess not even that. Like, Rudy's already 12 at this point, so.
And one thing I can't help but think about is, Eris says she wants a family, so is she going to be pregnant?
Oh, yeah.
What becomes of that?
Yeah, she did say she wanted to start a family, and they did.
We definitely know what they did.
Yeah, they bumped uglies, so. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't really even think about that as well. But that would totally change things if she was talking about pregnant with Rudy's child or with someone else. Because if she was pregnant with Rudy's child, then that seems like he's pretty rooted in Eris at that point. And and so him not having seen Sylphie for so long, I'm like, are they going to be able to pick up right back where they left off? Is it going to be a completely?
Sylph seems like a completely different person.
Yeah, and I'm curious what kind of her prowess can she incantationlessly cast?
Silent spell cast. Yeah. Maybe she's expanded on it, or maybe the water's all she managed to do. You never know.
Yeah.
Because it's even different with Rudy. Like Rudy can't immediately cast healing.
But it's like, so Rudy, he was so content on living out the rest of his life with Sylph.
Yeah. He committed to it already.
Before he had seen that letter from Roxy, then that kind of changed things. So I love her for that. I love that she kind of got him out of that. I don't want to see him be content. But I'm like, him seeing Sylph again, and then how he was frantically looking for her name on the missing persons board. He clearly, he
still cares.
Yeah, still cares about her. So it's kind of like, is it platonic? Is it, how does she feel? We don't know. We haven't seen her in so long.
There's a lot. I think they've done a great job in using the first season to set up for a great second season. I thought the writing on this was fantastic. Character development, fantastic. Animation on the combat scenes, amazing. So what?
This might be a little bit of the same question here, but so you've kind of given me some of your predictions, but other than what do you want to see? Like what do you, maybe not your prediction, but what is something you would like to see other than a battle mage?
I want to see some god level magic being cast.
We didn't get to see a whole lot, did we?
No, I don't think we know what a god level spell looks like, but we've seen a sword god in action. So I want to see some god level casting.
Yeah, and
if I just see that, I would be pretty happy.
And there wasn't too many battles, was there?
No, so I'm hoping to get some more. There were a couple cool combat scenes. Most of the combat was sparring.
Right.
So I'm hoping to see more just full-fledged combat.
And I want to see, like, so it's almost kind of like whenever Rudy had kind of cast his final attack at Orstead, he, like, combined some elements, manipulated them, and made that giant purple ball of destruction.
Like some compound magic.
Exactly. I want to see some more of that. I want to see some. Clearly, he's a genius. And then we didn't even really speak on after he was healed up. It kind of showed him practicing what Orstead did.
The nullification.
Yeah, the nullification. It kind of showed him practicing that. So clearly, like
that could make him a huge.
He's already incredible, and that's like Orsi even said he's maybe on par with Laplace.
Already.
So I really want to see some, just more Rudy.
We focused on kind of the people around Rudy.
And he was supporting. He did a lot of supporting roles in their combat and a lot of strategizing and supporting as opposed to.
I'd love to see him just come in and
right.
Yeah.
It's not really his personality, I guess, though.
No.
But now him kind of having, we see that he's maybe like he's regressed some, and he kind of found some inspiration after reflecting on his old family. However, we don't really know how that's going to affect. Like he might have a little hardened. His heart might be a little bit more hardened, and he's
more adult Rudy.
Yeah, not as sparing as he used to be. So I definitely want to see more action in him, and.
But I don't want them to cut back on the. I like the romance aspects.
Yeah.
I really like the development of characters and the world building. So if they could keep all those while giving us some more combat, I would love that.
I want to see some. The universe is awesome, and I want to see that. So let me ask you this: who of the two of Sylph? Cause I don't really see Roxy I don't really see her being with Rudy. You know, I think their relationship is a little bit different.
It is, and she's 40, 50. I mean, granted, in the grand scheme of things, she's probably in her 20s.
Yeah.
Because they live so long, but I don't see that really either. I think it's more of her acknowledging that Rudy's obsessed with her and her just brushing it off.
Yeah. So who? Obviously, we didn't get to see too much of Sylph, but who are you leaning towards? Do you think?
For now, it's hard to say. I'm a little salty. Eris did Rudy the way she did.
It's like
I understand why.
Right reasons,
wrong execution.
Yeah, poor execution.
I think she should have just said Rudy but Rudy wouldn't have let her if. She
we don't know how Rudy would react. Is he gonna be like okay, or is he gonna be like whoa?
Probably wouldn't have taken it well.
Exactly.
So I don't know. It's tough. I root for them both, but I think.
I mean, he and Eris have already, they've lost their virginity to one another, so that's, I'm sure, has some
significance.
Yeah.
I would say, as of my mentality right now, I would say I'm 55% Eris, 45% Sylphie. It's still pretty. I want to see more Sylphie and their dynamic because I liked.
We have no idea how she's gonna be. The last time we saw her, she was.
A kid just like Rudy.
Just like Rudy.
So I'm rooting. I think I'm rooting for Eris a little more.
She looked older in the right.
She did with silver hair too.
So is that what kind of makes you believe the time skippage? And if there's a time skip, I want to know what's happened in between that. You know. Yeah,
give me an OVA or something.
Yeah.
What about you? Who are you rooting for?
Eris all the way. I don't know. I'm just not really feeling Sylphie. She's a good friend. She's a cool friend.
Yeah.
I'm just not feeling her as a.
Eris
love
had some
interest.
Tremendous character.
She's a completely different person, and I love how she lights up when she talks about Rudy.
Yeah, you can tell.
So
and she's even pronouncing her love for him as she is away from him. So she definitely cares.
Overall, vitality.
I'm leaning on godlike vitality. I don't like to hand this out very much.
Yeah.
I think you really have to try hard to earn that tier of ranking, but it's up there. I definitely think it's the best isekai, at least of recent times that I've seen.
Yeah.
And
in a world where the anime is completely flooded with isekai all over the place, this one stands out.
Apart.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm gonna say godlike vitality. We don't hand this out. We don't hand this out willy nilly.
No, this is a big deal.
Yeah, this is a big deal. But I would have to agree, godlike vitality for sure.
Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want to see. Your predictions for season 2, and maybe what you'd like to see next. Until next time.
Till next time.